out an iron road sign from the side and threw it at Francis, who was far away, like a javelin. When Francis saw the road sign, he was so scared that his scalp went numb, but he didn't lose his cool. He immediately asked the driver to drive the off-road vehicle forward. After driving for 2 or 3 meters, the road sign landed where Francis was just a moment ago and sank deeply into the cement ground. Looking at the road sign that only revealed a small part, Francis was scared and thought that if he left a moment later, he would have turned into a skewer. Zhou Hao's attack did not work, but he did not plan to let Francis escape. He rushed forward more than 10 meters, then stomped on the ground with his feet. He flew more than 10 meters away from the ground and chased after Francis. That demon wants to hurt Sir Francis. Hurry up and beat him down. The Indonesian thugs below roared and raised their guns to attack Zhou Hao in the air. Although Zhou Hao was not afraid of the bullets, the force of the bullets had weakened his movement. Moreover, a thug below threw a grenade at Zhou Hao and exploded right next to him. Zhou Hao, who had no leverage in the air, had no choice but to fall down due to the impact of the explosion and fell into the encirclement of the thugs. Since that's the case, I'll just kill all of you. Zhou Hao was angry that these guys were obstructing him and hated their atrocities against the Huangs. Therefore, he didn't wait for them to attack him and used 100% of his power to kill these beasts who didn't deserve to be human. Ever since he had a powerful martial art, Zhou Hao had never tried to use 100% of his power even in the face of Supreme Expert, who was like Big Boss and Taro. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and hurt the innocent. However, Zhou Hao did not need to show any mercy to these beasts whose hands were stained with the blood of the Huangs. At Zhou Hao's level of martial arts, if he used 100% of his power, it would be very harmful to ordinary people who did not know martial arts, even if these ordinary people had modern firearms in their hands. At this moment, Zhou Hao was in the middle of hundreds of thugs, unleashing all of the moves from the Five Birds play. Sometimes, there were moves from the Great Luo Vajra Fist and Snow Seeker Plum Sword that he had learned from other experts. Wherever his punches and kicks went, there would be a storm of blood. Those who were brushed by Zhou Hao's punches and kicks would either die or be injured. They didn't even need to touch those thugs. The force unleashed by them was enough to shatter their internal organs. Moreover, these thugs seemed to see ferocious bears, tigers, deer, apes and cranes appearing behind Zhou Hao, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, wanting to devour them all. It was like a violent tornado swept across these ferocious thugs, leaving behind a long stream of blood and miserable screams. At the same time, the power of Zhou Hao's blade energy was not to be underestimated. Many of the thugs had no idea what was going on, but their heads had already left their bodies and flew into the sky. They could still see the horrible scene of slaughter below. 15 minutes later, almost the entire Shangnan Street was dyed red with blood. There were originally more than 300 thugs, but now, only a few dozen of them had fallen. Now, even those who had fanatical faith in the Shiva sect finally understood what it meant to be unstoppable after experiencing this genocide. That demon can't be killed. Run. Zhou Hao's absolute massacre had finally shattered their confidence in great god Shiva. All that was left was pure fear, and they instinctively fled in all directions. Zhou Hao crushed the throat bone of the thug in his hand, but he did not chase after those fleeing fellows. His body was covered in a thick layer of blood, and even the mask had turned dark red. He had never tried to kill someone so freely before. He felt as if all the blood in his body was boiling, and a strong desire to kill was spreading rapidly. This kind of extreme feeling was even more exciting than when he was with Li Shuihan all night long. Throwing away the corpse of the thug in his hand, Zhou Hao looked into the distance. There was a heavy armored team quickly approaching. In front of them were 2 tanks, followed by 2 armored vehicles equipped with heavy machine guns. Behind them were a large number of armed troops, and even an armed helicopter in the sky. Originally, the mastermind behind this incident was only planning to let the military police and gangsters mix in with the thugs and slaughter the Chinese. However, when he found out that there was a large number of unidentified militants suppressing the thugs and protecting the relocation of the Chinamen, he could no longer hold it in and even sent out the army in the name of suppressing the terrorists. After Francis found out that a terrifying monster had appeared here, the army immediately rushed over. They were still 600 to 700 meters away from Zhou Hao. The turret of the tank on the left turned around and aimed at Zhou Hao. Boom! A missile flew over. In Zhou Hao's eyes, the trajectory of the missile was very clear. He could easily avoid it. However, at this moment, Zhou Hao, who was immersed in the excitement of killing, did not even think of dodging. Although he knew that the power of this missile might hurt him, he did not dodge it. Huh. Zhou Hao shouted, and both his fists hit the cement floor. With his huge strength, the entire road in front of him was lifted up and blocked in front of Zhou Hao. It was like a wave that covered the missile. Boom. Blinding flames spread out along with a deafening explosion. The road that Zhou Hao had lifted was also shattered and scattered in all directions. Due to being blocked by the thick cement road, the power of the missile was reduced by more than half, and it was unable to harm Zhou Hao in the slightest. The soldiers on the other side did not even think that Zhou Hao could block the missile launched by the tank like this, and they all felt a strong sense of fear. The turrets of the two tanks moved at the same time, once again aiming at Zhou Hao. But this time, Zhou Hao did not passively defend. Instead, he grabbed an iron sand cover on the ground and used all his strength to throw it at the tank on the left. Under Zhou Hao's strength, the sand cover flew over like a shooting star. Its speed was even faster than the missile just now. At the same time, it kept spinning, making whooshing sounds. There was no time to dodge at all. The tank on the left side was hit directly by the cover of the well. The cover of the well was like a rolling wheel, drilling through the middle of the tank. The intense friction between the metals also created sparks. After all, the tank was made of special armor, so the cover did not penetrate the tank. Instead, it stopped at the back of the tank and did not cause any more damage. However, even so, the tank seemed to have been cut in half by a huge saw wheel. Not only was the turret cut in half, but there was also a shocking cut on the body of the tank below. The two gunners inside the tank were even directly smashed to pieces by the sand cover and died on the spot. These Indonesian soldiers had never encountered such a situation before. They were all dumbfounded. At this moment, a fire suddenly flew out from a window on the right side of the street and directly hit the other tank on the right. Before the soldiers could react, the tank was hit. With a loud sound, the entire tank exploded. Even the turret flew into the air and landed more than 10 meters away. Zhou Hao looked up at the window where the missile flew out and saw a man wearing a mask with a cylindrical weapon in his hand. It should be the missile launcher. Although the man was wearing a mask and his face could not be seen, Zhou Hao could tell from her figure that she was Li Shuihan. Zhou Hao had been focusing on killing just now, but he did not notice Li Shuihan's existence. He also did not expect that she was still here and did not retreat with the special forces. At this time, Li Shuihan also looked at Zhou Hao. There was some anger in her eyes, as if she was blaming Zhou Hao for being so impulsive to go against their armed forces. When their eyes collided, the armed helicopter in the sky descended. The two heavy machine guns on it shot out long tongues of flame, hitting the windowsill where Li Shuihan was standing, causing the entire wall to collapse. Li Shuihan, on the other hand, dodged earlier and barely dodged the powerful steel core bullet. Seeing that the armed helicopter actually attacked Li Shuihan, Zhou Hao, who already regarded Li Shuihan as his own woman, immediately became furious. He looked left and right. He walked over and grabbed an SUV. He spun it on the spot and used his strength and centrifugal force to throw the SUV into the air. He aimed at the helicopter. When the pilot saw the constantly approaching SUV, he couldn't be bothered to be shocked anymore and hurriedly controlled the helicopter to climb up. Because the pilot reacted in time and the helicopter's performance was very good. When the SUV just reached the highest point, it was still more than 10 centimeters away from the helicopter. However, just as the pilot and the other soldiers in the helicopter were about to heave a sigh of relief, they were surprised to see Zhou Hao's figure appear on the roof of the SUV. They saw Zhou Hao jump on the roof of the SUV and climb up to the front of the helicopter. Zhou Hao smashed the glass with one punch, grabbed the pilot's neck, pulled him out, and threw him down. When the other soldiers were about to attack him with guns, Zhou Hao sneered and broke the helicopter's operating table with one palm. He then tore the wires there, and then jumped back out of the helicopter. When Zhou Hao landed lightly on the ground, the helicopter had already lost control. It staggered and crashed into the building next to it. After breaking the propeller, it fell straight down. It happened to hit the armored vehicle below, and a violent explosion occurred. Many of the surrounding soldiers were caught in the crossfire and were thrown into chaos. Zhou Hao was not in the mood to pay attention to the Indonesian soldiers. He climbed up to the window where Li Shuihan had just been. He saw that other than a pile of rubble, he did not see Li Shuihan's figure. "Fourth boss," Zhou Hao called a few times. "Stop shouting. Are you afraid that others won't know I'm here?" Li Shuihan's voice came from behind the wall. 1. Zhou Hao was delighted and quickly walked over. Sure enough, he saw Li Shuihan leaning against the wall. Other than some dust on her body, she was not injured at all. "Why didn't you retreat with the special forces? It is very dangerous here," Zhou Hao said. Li Shuihan snorted. "I'm afraid that no one will collect your corpse if you die." Zhou Hao still wanted to say something, but Li Shuihan said, Follow me. I saw that he had let loose Hizith. That cunning fellow is hiding behind the Indonesian army. After saying that, she took the lead to walk over and approach the rear end of the army in the building. Moving forward in the building was much more hidden than walking down the street. Moreover, the soldiers below were in a panic because of the accident, which helped Zhou Hao and the others launch a sneak attack. After circling to the rear of the army, Zhou Hao saw Francis, who was hiding in an off-road vehicle. Before Zhou Hao could make a move, Li Shuihan jumped out of the building. She attacked Francis from above, and even Zhou Hao did not have time to stop her. Li Shuihan held a sharp knife in her hand. Francis and the other soldiers below did not notice what was above them, so Li Shuihan's sneak attack went very smoothly. But just as Li Shuihan was about to stab the military knife into Francis's skull, a hand suddenly pushed over from the side of Francis without any warning and actually blocked Li Shuihan's military knife. With Li Shuihan's strength as a first-class expert and her silent sneak attack from the sky, not to mention ordinary people, even inner experts might not be able to detect it. In fact, Francis, who was commanding the soldiers on the off-road vehicle, did not notice the danger approaching him. Li Shuihan thought that she would succeed in one strike, but the hand that quietly stretched out from Francis's side made Li Shuihan's attempt miss. Moreover, the force of the palm made Li Shuihan's arm numb. The military knife made of special metal was also broken. Making a backflip in the air, Li Shuihan landed on the ground, but she still retreated 2 or 3 steps before stopping her body. Her right arm trembled slightly and could not be lifted anymore. Li Shuihan looked at Francis and saw that Francis was also surprised. It was obvious that he had just found out that someone had attacked him. Li Shuihan also saw that the person who blocked her attack was the driver sitting next to Francis. It was an Asian man in his 30s. He had rough facial features and dark skin. He was tall and strong. He was also wearing a camouflage uniform. At a glance, he looked no different from an ordinary soldier. Li Shuihan also thought that he was an ordinary soldier just now, so she did not notice him at all. Only now did she realize that this person really hid his true abilities. Francis didn't expect that the ordinary guard beside him would have such strength. He looked at him in surprise. The man smiled at Francis. "Mr. Francis, you don't have to be afraid. I was ordered to protect you." He turned to look at Li Shuihan, who was wearing a mask. The surrounding soldiers pointed their guns at her. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Suddenly, the soldiers surrounding Li Shuihan suddenly spurted out thick blood and fell down amid screams. Li Shuihan, who had a very strong Qigong cultivation base, knew that the soldiers around her were all killed by the blade Qi that fell from the sky. The one who launched this attack was naturally Zhou Hao. Sure enough, Zhou Hao lightly landed beside Li Shuihan and supported her as he asked, "Are you all right?" Li Shuihan shook her head. Although her right arm was still numb and painful, it was already much better than before. She said to Zhou Hao, "Be careful of that guy. That guy's martial arts are very powerful and his inner energy is also very powerful." Zhou Hao nodded. He knew Li Shuihan's strength very well. She was even stronger than the 2 elders of the Tang sect that he had met before. She was only slightly weaker than the former ghost subordinate of the windy demon Otaro. And that person was actually able to block Li Shuihan's sneak attack with a palm. It could be seen how powerful she was. Hearing the conversation between Zhou Hao and Li Shuihan, that person sneered in fluent Mandarin, "You guys hiding in the dark? Are you people from China?" Zhou Hao and Li Shuihan did not respond to the man's words, in case the Indonesian army knew that China was involved in this storm. Seeing that person speak Mandarin so fluently, Zhou Hao also guessed that this person who was highly skilled in martial arts was also from China. If that man was also from Mandarin, then his actions of helping the enemy to harm Mandarin with Francis would be a crime worthy of death. Find a place to hide first. If you have the chance, leave this place first. Zhou Hao stared at that person and said to Li Shuihan, who was behind him. Li Shuihan stubbornly said, "No, I want to stay. Don't look down on people. Do you want me to be distracted by you? If I am alone, I can fight and leave whenever I want. You don't have to worry about me." Zhou Hao's tone became stern. "Who's worried about you? I just want to take revenge for Deng Deng Deng," Li Shuihan said, but her voice was much softer than before. Zhou Hao did not say much. He grabbed her shoulder with one hand and lifted her up, sending her to the windowsill on the 3rd floor. Francis wanted to board another armored vehicle and leave under the protection of the army. Zhou Hao's figure blurred. A strong wind blew on the ground. When Zhou Hao appeared again, he was less than 2 meters behind Francis. The soldiers on both sides of Francis didn't have time to stop him. However, just as Zhou Hao's hand was about to grab Francis, another figure appeared between him and Francis. It blocked Zhou Hao's hand from getting close to Francis. Zhou Hao frowned because he felt that this guy's strange movement technique was familiar. Take Mr. Francis and leave. After blocking Zhou Hao, this person shouted to the soldiers in Indonesian. Chirp, 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 chirp. Suddenly, there was a light sound. The 4 soldiers around Francis were shot and fell down. It turned out that they were attacked by Li Shuihan on the other side of the building. Francis had retired from the SSS assault team after all. He immediately rolled around and avoided the bullets. 2 small holes appeared on the ground where he was standing. The other soldiers took out their guns and shot at Li Shuihan. Li Shuihan turned around and hid behind the wall. She appeared behind a few windows and continuously shot at the soldiers and Francis. As 4th boss of the First Army, Li Shuihan was very good at guerrilla warfare. She could kill 1 person with every shot. Although Francis was not hit, he was forced to hide at the bottom of the armored car to avoid the bullets that came from who knows where. Li Shuihan stayed there and refused to leave. Zhou Hao was annoyed but also helpless. However, with Li Shuihan's martial arts and her powerful individual combat ability, unless she was an expert like that person, it would be very difficult to hurt her. When he returned to Zhou Hao's side, he hated this person who stopped him from killing Francis, so he did not hesitate to kill him. The man had seen Zhou Hao's terrifying strength when he was fighting against the army, so he used his full strength. After a few exchanges, Zhou Hao had to admit that this man was very strong. He was able to withstand this attack even though he didn't hold back. According to Zhou Hao's estimation, this man's strength was much stronger than the former ghost. He was almost as strong as Xiahou Bufu. He just didn't know whether his cultivation base had reached the realm of materialization or not. However, this man's heart was filled with bitterness. Even if he used 100% of his strength right from the beginning, he could only barely block Zhou Hao's attack. However, the bones in his arm that had collided with Zhou Hao were in excruciating pain. His internal organs and blood qi were also surging. He forcefully used his inner energy to suppress the boiling blood qi and pretended that nothing had happened. Who on earth is this guy? How can his martial arts be so powerful? He stared at Zhou Hao, who was wearing a mask. He was getting more and more shocked. He also felt that Zhou Hao's attack was getting more and more powerful. Humph! Zhou Hao shouted coldly. His 2 hands turned into tiger claws and clawed at the man. Although Francis was temporarily tied down by Li Shuihan, Li Shuihan's ammunition would eventually be depleted, and the Indonesian army's reinforcements would arrive very soon. If he did not get rid of Francis as soon as possible, it would be much more difficult to kill him. Therefore, Zhou Hao did not want to get entangled with this person in front of him and planned to end the battle quickly. The man saw a ferocious tiger with a bloody mouth appear behind Zhou Hao. It rushed towards him. After being hit by Zhou Hao's 2 hands, he slid nearly 10 meters backwards, leaving 2 deep dents on the hard cement ground. There were also several deep wounds on his forearm that showed his bones, and the bones in his left arm were broken. He forcefully swallowed the blood that had rushed to his throat. He looked at Zhou Hao with a pale face. Of course, Zhou Hao was not afraid. He already knew that although this man was strong, it was not difficult for him to defeat him. Suddenly, that man's figure disappeared in an instant. At the same time, Zhou Hao felt a sense of danger in his heart. Without thinking, he threw a punch to the left above him. The man's figure had just appeared there. Before he could launch a sneak attack on Zhou Hao's fist had already reached his chest. Unable to dodge, the man could only raise his left hand, which was the closest to his chest, to block Zhou Hao's punch. Crack! The already broken left arm bone was broken in the opposite direction under Zhou Hao's punch. The white bone also pierced through the flesh and revealed itself. Although his left arm was broken, he still managed to avoid being hit in the chest by Zhou Hao, saving his life. Zhou Hao was shocked because he finally recognized the strange movement technique that this man used to disappear into thin air. It was the trick of Wind Devil Clan. With this man's strength, his status in Wind Devil Clan was not low. Could it be another protector of Little Taro, the Wind Demon, Empress Ghost? Zhou Hao thought, if that's the case, why would the Wind Devil Clan get involved in Indonesia and protect Francis? Could it be that they are related to the Shiva Church? Since Zhou Hao had guessed the identity of the other party, he was even more ruthless. He grabbed the man's left wrist before he could retreat and pulled him over. The man's left arm was already fractured, and he was being pulled by Zhou Hao like this. The pain was unimaginable. But he also knew that if he was pulled back by Zhou Hao, his injuries would be even worse, and he might even lose his life. Gritting his teeth, he twisted the muscles on his waist with all his strength, and his body flipped backwards. His left forearm was also torn apart by the strong pulling force. Looking at the half of the arm in his hand, and then looking at the man who had escaped far away, Zhou Hao was angry and helpless. He did not think that this man would lose his arm to save his life so decisively. After throwing away the bloody broken arm, Zhou Hao turned to look at the other side. He saw that Li Shuahan's bullets had run out and Francis was about to get into the armored car. You want to go? It's not that easy. Zhou Hao sneered and rushed towards the armored vehicle Francis was in. The surrounding soldiers saw that the only person who could block Zhou Hao's Wind Devil clan was injured and ran away. They did not dare to face Zhou Hao head-on and spread out in all directions. Francis had already gotten into the armored car and closed us off. Zhou Hao jumped over the armored car and landed in front of the armored car. Francis saw Zhou Hao blocking the front of the vehicle. He pulled the driver to the side and sat in front of the operating table. He gritted his teeth and said, F***CK, I will crush you. Francis stepped on the accelerator, and the armored car roared like a giant beast. It rushed towards Zhou Hao. The heavy machine gun on the armored car also spat out a string of flames. It shot the steel core bullets at Zhou Hao at high speed. Zhou Hao operated the genuine aura. His body, which was invulnerable to weapons, became tougher. He resisted the steel core bullets, which had a strong penetrating power. He was only hurt. Facing the armored vehicle in front of him, Zhou Hao shouted and struck out with both his palms, hitting the deck of the armored vehicle. Under Zhou Hao's strong palm force, the armored vehicle with hundreds of horsepower stopped. The thick deck of the vehicle was dented by Zhou Hao. Taking advantage of the temporary paralysis of the armored vehicle, Zhou Hao waved out a few more blade energies, cutting off the wheels and axles of the vehicle, making the armored vehicle lose its ability to move. Jumping into the vehicle, Zhou Hao first kicked the heavy machine gun away, then grabbed the gate and pulled it open. As soon as the gate was opened, there was a bang. Francis, who was in the car, saw the gate open and raised his howitzer to shoot at Zhou Hao. Zhou Hao slightly turned his body and dodged the grenade that flew out of the car. When Francis wanted to shoot a second time, Zhou Hao used his palm to pull Francis out of the car. Francis felt as if an invisible hand had pulled him out of the armored car. He fell to the ground and the grenade in his hand fell to the side. The fall was not light. Even Francis, who was once an elite of the special forces, could not get up. Zhou Hao jumped down from the roof of the car and slowly walked towards Francis. His left hand formed a claw shape and the grenade on the ground flew into his hand. Francis wanted to stand up and run when he saw Zhou Hao walking towards him without blinking. However, Zhou Hao stepped on his back and stepped on him. His face was tightly stuck to the ground. You just killed the civilians of China. You must be very happy. Zhou Hao said in English, you can even kill a girl who is not even 10 years old. You are like those Indonesian beasts. You are not worthy of being a human. Francis remembered how he had tortured and killed Deng 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 and was full of excitement. At this time, Francis knew regret. He shouted, sorry. I know I was wrong. Spare me. Please spare me. You'd better go to hell and feel ashamed following the innocent who died at your hands. Zhou Hao's voice came from behind the mask, sounding unusually cold. Francis looked at the soldiers in the distance who did not dare to come forward. He shouted in Indonesian, what are you doing there? Come and save me. These soldiers had witnessed Zhou Hao's Azura killing method. They didn't dare to come and save Francis. Francis knew that he wouldn't be able to escape this time. He said to Zhou Hao, don't kill me. It was Varanto who told me to do this. It was Varanto who told me to do this. It's all his fault. It has nothing to do with me. Varanto? Isn't it Prabowo? Zhou Hao said coldly. I am the person that Varanto arranged to be by Prabowo's side. Prabowo originally wanted to start this incident when Suharto returned to the country, but Varanto knew that Prabowo wanted to seize power by force, so he asked me to start it ahead of time and ruin Prabowo's plan. Francis said, what I said is true. Everything was created by Varanto and Prabowo. It has nothing to do with me. Francis's words confirmed Zhou Hao's previous guess. This violent act against the Chinaman was created by Varanto and Prabowo to fight for power and profit. Thank you for telling me this, but I'm sorry. You still have to go to hell. Zhou Hao sneered. He waved a few small blades and cut Francis's pants. Then he pointed the muzzle of the grenade at Francis's butt. He felt a cold metal sensation coming from his lower body. A deep chill spread throughout Francis's body. He had already guessed what Zhou Hao was going to do to him. No. Please don't do this. Please let me die a little faster. Francis could only hope that he could die a comfortable death. He wanted to struggle but couldn't move under Zhou Hao's feet. Zhou Hao ignored Francis's pleas for mercy. He exerted strength in his hand and inserted the thick gun barrel into his anus. Francis screamed in pain. He twisted the muscles on his butt. He pressed the trigger of the grenade, and the grenade shot into Francis's body. Francis's scream was 10 times louder than before, and blood kept coming out of his mouth. Zhou Hao let go of Francis's back and moved to the side. Francis staggered up from the ground. The grenade was still stuck in his anus. After taking 2 steps, he fiercely ran up. His face was full of fear of death. He wanted to go to the hospital and ask for help. However, if he dared to take 2 steps, he would hear a bang. Francis was blown away by the explosion. Blood and broken limbs were scattered everywhere. Hundreds of shrapnel exploded from the grenade. Zhou Hao sighed deeply and looked up at the sky. He said to himself, "Old Jiang, Deng Din, I have already avenged you. Rest in peace." At this time, Li Shuihan came to Zhou Hao's side and said to him, "Let's go. The Indonesian army is coming." Zhou Hao did not insist on staying. He nodded and quickly left with Li Shuihan. The two deliberately circled around the area a few times to make sure that no one could follow them before secretly returning to the Golden Court building. The commanders of the First Army who originally wanted to send First Army to support Zhou Hao and Li Shuihan only relaxed when they saw that the two of them had returned safely. After Zhou Hao and Li Shuihan took off their masks, they ignored the blood all over their bodies and asked the commanders, "How is it? Have the Hua people been transferred?" "Don't worry, both of them have been transferred. They are now in the secret shelter that we have set up." In the 6 cities that were in chaos, other than the 320 people who were killed during the outbreak of the riot, the rest of them are safe. Zhou Hao heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. Although more than 320 people were killed, the number of deaths in his previous life was much better. In other words, his efforts had not been in vain. At this moment, he heard another commander say, "However, because of our appearance, the Indonesian government sent a large number of troops to suppress armed terrorists. Although our people have already retreated, the Indonesian military is currently conducting a tight search everywhere. I think our secret shelter will soon be discovered by them. At that time, this is Indonesia after all. If they attack us in the name of fighting terrorists, I'm afraid we will be in deep trouble." Zhou Hao said, "We need to start immediately. Ask President Pang and the others to arrange for Wahid to announce the evidence of Suharto's family's corruption and invasion of the country's property. We also need the Indonesian government to punish Suharto." He looked at Li Shuihan. "Also, the guy who protected Francis just now was a person from Wind Devil clan. Francis also said that he was sent to Prabowo's side as a spy. I saw that the Wind Devil clan had colluded with Victor. The thing I'm most afraid of is that the Wind Fiend Taro is also in Indonesia. Our people have already been exposed in order to protect the people of China. The Wind Fiend Taro and Varanto will soon guess our identities. At that time, I'm afraid that it will be detrimental to China." Zhou Hao's expression was solemn as he said in a deep voice, "So, by tonight at the latest, we will take control of Varanto and Prabowo, the 2 most powerful generals in the Indonesian military, and keep the Indonesian military in check. Only then will we be able to push Wahid to the position of president." Originally, with Zhou Hao and the First Army's ability, although it was difficult to secretly pin down the Indonesian military, it was not impossible. Furthermore, the First Army had planted people around the military leaders of the various Indonesian provinces. They could stabilize these feudal ministers at a critical moment, and then slowly deal with Wahid after he gained power. However, Zhou Hao and Big Boss did not think that Wind Devil clans would be involved in this, especially the Windy Demon Taro. It was very likely that he was with Varanto at this moment. This made it difficult for Zhou Hao and the others to control Varanto's plan. There is not much time left. We must control him before Varanto mobilized the army to deal with us. Also, Prabowo must not let him have the opportunity. Zhou Hao said, "Fourth boss tonight, you take your men to Prabowo's side. I will bring my men to Varanto's side. Also, let Nanon broadcast the incident of Shiva committing adultery on TV, and that Prabowo is the culprit behind it. Try to shift the anger of the Indonesian society to him. Oh right, the Indonesian government also needs to make the situation known to the whole world. First, we need to take control of the international public opinion." As Zhou Hao had expected, in less than an hour, Varanto and Prabowo had deployed close to 10,000 soldiers in Jakarta to search for the First Army and the Special Forces. They also made Jakarta enter a state of martial law. They announced to the public that they were hunting down the terrorists who had participated in the riot today, and that the riot today was also blamed on First Army. Prabowo had planned to take advantage of the chaos to obtain the assets of Pang Jinting and the other rich merchants. Therefore, he had openly used the army to search the various enterprises and factories of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce. Varanto also seemed to have the same idea as Prabowo. His army also specially looked for the companies and properties of the wealthy merchants, saying that they were searching for terrorists. Fortunately, Zhou Hao and the others were prepared. They had withdrawn from the Golden Court building earlier and hid among the people. Varanto and Prabowo's troops could not find them at all. Under the protection of First Army, Wahid publicized the evidence of Suharto's family's corruption through the TV station. At the same time, he also publicized the inside story of the Indonesian government secretly causing the thugs to harm the people of China to the international community. It immediately caused an uproar. Today's riot had just happened when it was suppressed by the special forces that rushed over. Therefore, the number of Indonesian casualties was far lower than history. Although that was the case, the photos and videos of more than 300 Indonesian victims were still appalling. Moreover, this was not the first time Indonesian people were harmed. Wahid also released the relevant information about the killings of the Indonesian people in 1995 and the previous few times. As Wahid's family had considerable power in Indonesia, the Indonesian government had sufficient evidence to frame the Indonesian people. It could be said that the evidence was as solid as a mountain. As a result, the Indonesian citizens hated Suharto's family for brazenly encroaching on the country's property. Internationally, they strongly condemned the Indonesian government for persecuting the local Indonesian people. They accused Indonesia of being a country with a lack of human rights. The Indonesian people from all over the world expressed their anger through various channels and demanded that Indonesia immediately punish the culprits who persecuted the Indonesian people. As such, the fury of both the country and the outside world was focused on Suharto and his family. Wahid's actions shocked and enraged Victor, Prabowo, and Indonesian Congress. They all sent people to chase after Wahid. However, under the deliberate concealment of the First Army, they had no idea where Wahid was. They could only be angry at Wahid, who was righteous and righteous on TV. Originally, many people knew that the people of China were ostracized and invaded in Indonesia. However, it had nothing to do with them. In addition, the Indonesian government deliberately concealed it. In particular, many large European and American companies had shares in Indonesia's resource mining industry. Therefore, under normal circumstances, if it were not for some earth-shattering event, not many people would care about Indonesian people's lives. But now, even Wahid, who had many insider information about Suharto's government, and Pang Jinting, who had directly helped Suharto's family laundering money, had suddenly exposed these scandals. Furthermore, the videos of the Indonesian people being slaughtered were quickly spread across the world through the newly risen internet, exposing the corrupted Indonesian government to the rest of the world. Furthermore, in the original history, China, which had only expressed its strong denouncement, now showed a very tough attitude because of its involvement in the war. The current foreign minister even made a statement in front of the media, warning Indonesia that if Indonesia did not stop the situation of the Chinese being harmed, they would send military forces to Indonesia to protect their own people. After all, China could not openly interfere in other countries' internal affairs, but there were indeed many foreigners with Chinese nationalities in Indonesia. Therefore, on this point, no one could accuse China of anything. The rare unyielding attitude of China also attracted the attention of Japan and America. They speculated that it was because of the increase in military strength that China was so unyielding. Of course, this problem could only be solved by the central government. Zhou Hao knew that China was so tough because they wanted to pressure the Indonesian government so that they could cooperate with the First Army. However, the central government also had a great advantage in doing this, which was to increase the pride of the people in the country. At least in terms of spirit, the cowardly atmosphere in the past was cleared. Not to mention that Suharto, who was in the middle of a foreign visit, immediately ended the visit and decided to return to Indonesia tomorrow. Currently, Zhou Hao, Li Shuihan, and the others were preparing to sneak into the residences of Varanto and Prabowo to control these two major Indonesian warlords. Fourth boss, you are in charge of dealing with Prabowo. I will be in charge of Varanto. Zhou Hao said to Li Shuihan, and at the same time, he told the commanders of the other troops, everyone, pay close attention to the generals under Varanto and Prabowo. If they have any unusual movements, you must immediately restrict them and cut off their contact with the outside world to avoid unnecessary complications. The commanders nodded solemnly. Li Shuihan said, Taro the Wind Fiend might be in Varanto. Can you handle him? Don't make us lose face just because you overestimate yourself. Zhou Hao glared at her fiercely. He was thinking about how to teach her a lesson after this matter was over. He said, although the Wind Fiend Taro is unfathomable, I have the confidence to deal with him. 4. Oh right. He turned to the commanders and said, I will sneak into Varanto alone. Because if I'm alone, it'll be harder for the other side to discover me, and if there's any accident, it'll be easier to retreat. I'll send a signal to you, after I've taken control of the situation. You'll only be able to send people in when the time comes, all right? Knowing that Zhou Hao's words made sense, the commanders in charge of this operation all nodded. Looking at the deep night sky outside the window, Zhou Hao said, "All right, there is no time to lose. Tonight, we must control the situation. Otherwise, when Suharto returns, things will be much more difficult." When everyone heard this, they immediately went to prepare in secret. At this time, Li Shuihan handed an item to Zhou Hao. It was the Beijing opera mask that Zhou Hao had taken from the Old Jiang restaurant. Because of tonight's operation, their identities could not be exposed. After handing the mask to Zhou Hao, Li Shuihan did not say a word and turned around to leave. Her attitude was very cold. Zhou Hao shook his head slightly and put on the mask. He seemed to have turned back into the cold killer from the day. Rumble. Lightning flashed in the night sky, and fine rain poured down, enveloping Jakarta in a hazy rain. Despite so many rainy nights, the residence of Varanto was still heavily guarded. Almost every guard was armed with real bullets, and a few of them even had heavy weapons in their hands. The mansion was like a bunker, and it was heavily guarded. Even if heavy armored troops attacked it, they would not be able to take it down in a short period of time. However, this place, which ordinary people could not see with their eyes, was like Zhou Hao's backyard. He could come and go as he pleased. This was because the heavy guards didn't notice him when he quietly entered this place under the cover of the night and the heavy rain. First Army had investigated the official residence of Varanto a long time ago and found the blueprint of the building. So Zhou Hao was very familiar with the structure of the official residence. He also knew that the place where Varanto stayed the most was the study. After easily avoiding the heavy guards, Zhou Hao quickly came to the study from the window outside. Compared to the tight security outside, there were no guards in the study. Zhou Hao also saw his target as he had wished, the general commander of the Indonesian Tri-Army Armed Forces and the Minister of Defense, the 51-year-old Varanto of Shinian. Varanto sat on a leather chair with his legs crossed and a cigar in his mouth. His face was full of satisfaction. Zhou Hao did not deliberately hide himself. Instead, he stood in front of Varanto openly and looked at this iron-blooded, callous, and cunning middle-aged man. It was this ordinary-looking middle-aged man who had placed Francis next to Prabowo. Prabowo had unknowingly regarded him as his confidant. It was also this man who had ordered Francis to start a riot ahead of time and caused the deaths of many Chinese people. Zhou Hao even suspected that in his previous life, during the May Rebellion, this guy had not participated in it. After that, he pushed all the blame onto Prabowo. When he saw Zhou Hao, Varanto didn't look surprised at all. He just sneered in half-familiar Mandarin. "I knew you would come. Sir was right. You really came." Zhou Hao didn't have the time to think about who this Sir that Varanto spoke of was. His intuition told him that it was dangerous. He immediately turned around to look at the dark corner of the study. He saw a figure slowly walking out of the darkness, as if it was also a part of the darkness. This person was wearing a typical Japanese warrior robe, and he also wore a bronze mask made of an evil ghost. His long silver hair hung behind his back. He was the Wind Fiend Taro, whom Zhou Hao had met and fought with once. It really is the Wind Fiend Taro. Zhou Hao was shocked in his heart, but he also secretly guessed the reason why this person colluded with Varanto. Zhou Hao was also wearing a mask, but the Wind Devil still recognized Zhou Hao at a glance. Because he had fought with Zhou Hao before, he clearly remembered the chi on Zhou Hao's body. Taro looked at Zhou Hao coldly and said in his lousy Mandarin, "When the Ghost Queen came back with injuries and told me what happened during the day, I knew it was you, Zhou Hao." Zhou Hao wasn't surprised that Taro recognized him. He said coldly, "I didn't expect you to interfere in this matter. I have already cooperated with General Varanto before you. We have been friends for 5 years. If you want to interfere, you should be the one meddling." Taro said, "I think those guys hiding in the dark today should be the First Army." Humph. Didn't China always proclaim to not interfere with the internal affairs of other countries? Why did they send the First Army troops here now? Varanto sneered and said, "It's a shame that China claims to be a big country. I didn't expect it to be so shameless." Zhou Hao was not interested in arguing with them about this matter. In terms of international interests, justice and injustice could no longer be differentiated. As for Varanto and the others, they had not captured the people of First Army and the Special Forces alive, so there was no evidence to testify against China. From the moment Taylor the Wind Demon appeared, Zhou Hao had already circulated the genuine aura all over his body and entered a state of combat. However, he heard the Wind Devil Taro say to Varanto, "General Varanto, I'm afraid that the target of this person is you. Please go to a safe place first. I'll deal with him." Then I'll leave it to you, sir. Varanto smiled and walked towards the door. Zhou Hao could not let Varanto leave. He disappeared from where he was in a flash and rushed towards Varanto at a speed that normal people could not see with their naked eyes. However, the Wind Devil Taro's speed was not any slower than Zhou Hao's. Instead, he appeared between Zhou Hao and Varanto and blocked Zhou Hao. Taro's strength was much stronger than the Ghost Queen during the day, so Zhou Hao didn't plan to hold back at all. He went all out from the very beginning. Bang! Amidst the muffled sound of their physical bodies colliding, Zhou Hao and Taro's energy spread out in all directions like a shock wave, shattering all the surrounding lights and decorations. After Zhou Hao and the Wind Devil Taro's exchange of blows, both of them were forced to retreat by the force of their opponent. Under the cover of Taro, Varanto had already walked to the door of the study. Beside him were two Wind Devil clans, Ninja. Zhou Hao was anxious. He took advantage of the gap between him and the Wind Fiend Taro to shoot out several sharp fingers and blade beams in an attempt to stop Varanto. The Wind Devil who was in the air flicked his finger a few times and also shot out a few genuine auras, scattering all the fingers and blade lights that were attacking the Wind Devil. Varanto was about to leave. Zhou Hao somersaulted backwards in the air and stomped on the wall behind him. Cracks immediately appeared on the wall, and Zhou Hao flew towards Varanto like a cannonball. However, just like before, the Wind Demon Taro still blocked in front of Zhou Hao in time. "Get out of my way!" Zhou Hao shouted angrily. His palm cut into the chest of the demon like a sharp knife. The genuine aura in Zhou Hao's palm was extremely sharp. Before the Wind Fiend Taro raised his hand to block, it had pierced through his defense and went straight for his chest. Taro could clearly feel his life was in danger. He focused his eyes and pulled his left hand out from his waist diagonally. Zhou Hao, who was about to hit Taro, saw a dazzling silver light appear in Taro's hand. It was coming at him from below. Before the silver light even reached him, Zhou Hao could already clearly feel the powerful killing intent within. The energy was like a wave rushing towards him. Zhou Hao was shocked. If he persisted in attacking the chest of the Wind Devil, it would be difficult for him to dodge the fierce attack of the Wind Devil. Helpless, Zhou Hao could only withdraw his right hand. He crossed his arms in front of his chest to block the attack of the Wind Devil. The silver light collided with Zhou Hao's body. The huge force sent Zhou Hao flying. He crashed into the ceiling and broke through the sky, flying high up into the sky outside the house. At this time, Varanto had left the study under the protection of the Wind Devil clan and was moving to a safe place. Therefore, Tyro was able to relax and deal with Zhou Hao. He lightly tapped on the ground and lightly jumped up. He jumped from the hole that Zhou Hao had crashed through to the roof. Although Zhou Hao was sent flying, he was not injured. There was only a thin line of blood on both of his arms. He was very surprised. Because of the protection of the protective genuine aura and his strong and tough body, even the steel core bullets shot out by the heavy machine gun could not hurt him. But at this moment, he was cut by the silver light. Looking at the windy demon Taro on the roof, he saw that he was holding a 70-centimeter-long Japanese knife. In the deep night sky, there was a faint silver light. When the rain fell on the knife, it did not even touch it and directly slid down. Zhou Hao steadied his body from the sky and landed on the roof. He stared at Taro with a serious expression. This was the first time Taro had shown his weapon. Judging from the power of the attack just now, Taro's knife skills were much more powerful than Jinguki Yushiro, who was the master of knife skills beside Nanami Keiru. Zhou Hao did not immediately attack the Wind Fiend Taro. Instead, he raised his left hand and called out to the communication device on his wrist. He wanted to inform the First Army hiding in the outer perimeter to intercept Varanto. But after calling a few times, there was no response from the other side. There was only a rustling sound of signal. You want to inform your accomplices to intercept Varanto, right? On the other side, Wind Fiend Taro sneered. It's useless. Your accomplices have probably already been killed by my people. Also, I know that you must have sent people to plot against Prabowo. However, I have also sent people over. They are the team led by the former ghost. Hehe, if there isn't an expert like you on Prabowo's side, I'm afraid that they won't be able to deal with the former ghost. D***M in it. Zhou Hao didn't expect that the little Taro would arrange for someone to ambush the First Army. Even his two guardians were on Indonesia's side. If this was the case, perhaps the strongest combat strength of the Wind Devil clan would be here. Furthermore, in the First Army in Indonesia, the third manager, Zhu Shoujing, and fourth boss Li Shuihan, who had the highest martial arts, were protecting Wahid. They were not in Jakarta. Li Shuihan's strength was also slightly weaker than that of the former ghost. If that was the case, the first army, led by Li Shuihan, would probably fall into a very dangerous situation. Zhou Hao wanted to return to help Li Shuihan and the others, but Taro would obviously not let him leave easily. The only way was to defeat Taro as soon as possible. Taro held his knife in front of him and looked at Zhou Hao coldly. He said, "It has been a long time since I drank the blood of this wondrous spell village. Today, I will use your blood to feed it." Zhou Hao knew that Muramasa was the most famous demon sword in Japan. In fact, Taro did not refer to a knife. This was because Muramasa was not the name of the blade, but the person who forged it. The blade they forged was called Muramasa. Of the many Muramasa recorded in Japanese history, the most famous was the wondrous spell Muramasa in the hands of the wind fiend Taro. It was named after the wondrous lotus sutra carved into its sheath. Wondrous lotus residence joint / The wind fiend Taro shouted coldly. A half-moon-shaped blade light was swung out from the wondrous spell Muramasa and instantly avoided the thick curtain of rain, sweeping towards Zhou Hao. After seeing the trajectory of the blade light, Zhou Hao did not plan to take it head-on. He jumped and dodged. However, when the blade light passed by Zhou Hao's side, it suddenly changed its trajectory in a straight line. Without any warning, it turned 90 degrees and wrapped around Zhou Hao's body. The hidden force was also instantly activated, causing Zhou Hao's genuine aura to roll. Why is it so strange? Zhou Hao looked at his torn clothes and the long bloody scar that fell from his left shoulder to his abdomen. His mind was filled with shock. However, Zhou Hao didn't have time to think about why the blade light of the Wind Devil had suddenly changed direction, because the Wind Devil had already jumped into the air and slashed at Zhou Hao with more than 10 huge blade lights. Under such a concentrated attack, it was impossible to completely dodge the blade lights that could change direction midway. Therefore, Zhou Hao raised both his fists and unleashed a powerful genuine aura to counter the blade lights. Both of their strengths had reached the limit of fighter. The powerful force of both parties collided in the air, pushing out the rainwater within a radius of dozens of meters, forming a huge vacuum zone. When the guards around the mansion saw such a spectacular scene, they were all shocked by the power of both of them. Because Varanto had previously instructed them not to hinder Tyro the Wind Demon from dealing with Zhou Hao, these guards did not dare to rashly attack and only guarded the surroundings. Zhou Hao and Taro had already entangled themselves in the air. Taro used a knife, while Zhou Hao used his hand to fight with force. The force of the collision was like a whirlwind that blew in all directions. Although Zhou Hao had poured the genuine aura into his arms, the sharpness and toughness of the genuine aura was beyond Zhou Hao's expectation. In addition, Taro had poured the genuine aura into it. Therefore, after 1,000 moves, the clothes on Zhou Hao's upper body had already been cut into pieces by the sharp edge of the blade. Slight traces of blood had also appeared on his arms and upper body. As for Taro the Wind Demon, he didn't have a good time either. Under Zhou Hao's fist and palm strike, Wondrous Spell Village kept producing buzzing sounds. If it wasn't for Taro the Wind Demon's powerful genuine aura, perhaps the #1 blade in Japan would have been broken by Zhou Hao. After exchanging 1,000 blows, both of them retreated. Zhou Hao, who was standing on the roof, felt that his genuine aura was showing signs of exhaustion, and his breathing was no longer as steady as before. With his sharp eyesight, he immediately noticed the changes in Zhou Hao and said with a smile, "Humph. Zhou Hao, you are finally tired." Taro laughed as he looked at Zhou Hao, who was gasping for breath. "You killed so many people in the day, and you used your physical body to fight against the heavy weapons of the army. The consumption of genuine auras must be huge. If I were to defeat you now, I'm afraid that it would be an unfair victory." Indeed, Zhou Hao had killed hundreds of people today, and he had also fought against the tanks, armored vehicles, and armed helicopters of the Indonesian army. Although Zhou Hao's inner energy was unfathomable, it was inevitable that he would consume a lot of energy. Compared to ordinary people, Zhou Hao was definitely a Superman, but he was not a god. If Zhou Hao was allowed to rest for a day or two, it would not be difficult for him to restore the genuine aura to its peak state. However, in order to ensure the success of this operation, Zhou Hao came to Varanto without any rest. He even fought fiercely with this supreme expert who wasn't any weaker than him for a long time. Because of this, Zhou Hao, who was not in his best condition, finally had a situation where he could not keep up. He was very clear about his current situation, but the fighting intent in his eyes didn't weaken in the slightest. He said indifferently, "At least, I still have the strength to fight you. I admire your fighting spirit. As fighter, we shouldn't have taken advantage of others' weakness, but your existence is too much of a threat to me and my Wind Devil clan. Today, you will stay here forever." He saw the windy demon little Taro holding his saber backhanded. The tip of the saber was pointed towards the edge of the saber. The genuine auras flowing on his body also separated the surrounding rainwater. And behind him, an Azura evil spirit with 3 heads, 6 arms, and a malevolent expression appeared. Zhou knew that this attack from Wind Fiend Taro was no small matter. He took out a small pill from his pocket, took off the mask, and swallowed it. You plan to stimulate yourself with medicine to increase your strength? Taro maintained the starting position of the attack, his laughter full of disdain. But it's too late now. In your current state, no immortal pills are of any use to you. His gaze became increasingly cold as he said slowly, "Take this move of mine, the Great Thousand Technique, the Misty Lotus." Taro's voice was still heard from the other side, but his figure had already appeared in front of Zhou. With Zhou's eyesight, he was able to catch the trajectory of the bullet. He was actually unable to see Taro's movements. Taro, the wind demon, seemed to have forcefully broken the law of space, directly passing through from that side to here. After that, Zhou saw that the Wondrous Spell Village's righteous sword of Taro had disappeared. To be precise, the blade of the Wondrous Spell Village chief was missing. The only thing left in the Wind Demon Village chief's hand was the handle of the brocade belt. At the same time, a burst of dazzling silver light surged from all directions, completely enveloping Zhou. The only thing that entered his eyes was that intense silver light, as if it had been struck by lightning. This was the ultimate strike of the Wind Demon Taro. He had used 100% of his power. No, he had used 120% of his power to launch this attack. He wanted to take advantage of Zhou's weakened state to kill him in one fell swoop and eliminate this huge threat. Zhou once again felt that his life was in danger. He knew that if he couldn't block the attack of the Wind Devil, Taro, he would really die in the hands of the Wind Devil. At this moment, Zhou felt that he was infinitely close to death. He had this feeling before. It was the exact same feeling when he was killed by Huang Wank in his previous life. Could it be that I really want to die again? Zhou felt fear from the bottom of his heart, because compared to his previous life, he had more burdens and feelings for Huang Wank in this life. No, sister and the others are still waiting for me to return. How can I die here? In this extremely dangerous situation, Zhou's superhuman instincts became even sharper. Facing the silver light that completely enveloped him without a single gap, Zhou relied on his intuition to attack the weakest point. White Tiger 5 Kingdoms Sword. Zhou's fist struck a point of silver light in front of him. It was like an indestructible sharp sword, piercing through the layers of silver light. The sword chi that was moving in all directions was accompanied by a series of tiger roars. In an instant, the silver light that was like a cage broke into tiny bits of light and finally disappeared without a trace. As for Wind Fiend Taro, he was standing more than 10 meters away. Although his expression could not be seen from the mask on his face, from his gaze, it could be seen that he was definitely dumbstruck right now. Just now, he had used the ultimate move of Zhou, the Great Thousand Fart, Mist Lotus. He had already enveloped Zhou in the blade light, but suddenly, he saw a blade piercing through the blade light. After that, the blade transformed into a huge and ferocious white tiger, breaking free from the cage of the Great Thousand Fart Misty Lotus and breaking the ultimate skill of Windy Demon Taro. He stared blankly at the wondrous spell Muramesa in his hand. The blade that had originally been flowing like water was now dim and lightless. There were even 2 tiny cracks on it. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Suddenly, the warrior robe on the upper body of the wind demon Little Taro suddenly exploded and scattered. On his chest, there was actually a clear fist imprint. Puff! A mouthful of blood was spat out from the evil ghost mask, and the shock in Taro's eyes became even greater. It turned out that Zhou's attack had not only broken the Great Thousand Magical Mist Lotus of the Windy Demon, it had also hit him, causing him to suffer severe internal injuries. The Windy Demon had never thought that Zhou would be able to unleash such a powerful force in such a desperate situation and severely injure him. However, Zhou's condition wasn't any better either. Although he had broken the ultimate move of the Windy Demon, part of the force of the Great Thousand Fahrenheit Mist Lotus had still landed on his body. Furthermore, the White Tiger 5 Kingdoms sword that he had unleashed to save his life not only exhausted the already weakened genuine aura, but also damaged his 8 extraordinary meridians. Objectively speaking, Zhou's current internal injuries were not any lighter than Tai Lang's. Taro could tell that Zhou's current body was weaker than an ordinary person's, and that he still had some energy left, so he wanted to use this opportunity to kill Zhou. However, just as he took a step forward, he spurted out another mouthful of blood. Furthermore, the blood he spat out this time was a dark black color. Taro was shocked. He looked at Zhou Hao in astonishment and asked, "That move of yours just now was poisonous?" Zhou Hao smiled with a pale face. Taro also remembered the pill that Zhou Hao had just eaten. Now, it seemed like it wasn't a pill that could replenish genuine auras. It was a poison that contained a huge poison. Due to the amber fruit, Zhou Hao's constitution wasn't afraid of poison. After meeting Supreme Expert, who had the strength to kill him, like Big Boss and Tai Luo Fengma, Zhou Hao had decided to use the advantage of not being afraid of poison to deal with those Supreme Expert with him. After he ate it, he wrapped the poison with the genuine aura in his body and poured it into his hand before his blood could decompose the poison. With that strike just now, Zhou Hao had already struck the poison that had caused his throat to bleed onto the body of little Taro. You are so despicable." The angry voice of the wind demon Taro came from the mask. "Ha ha ha ha. A shameless person like you who takes advantage of others is also qualified to criticize others for being despicable." A clear laugh came from the night sky. Zhou Hao and Taro's expressions changed. From the sound of this laughter, it could be seen that the inner force of this person was extremely powerful. It was afraid that this person would not be weaker than Zhou Hao or Taro. And this wasn't the voice of Big Boss Hanmei. Therefore, if the man was hostile, Zhou Hao wouldn't be able to stop him. He was afraid that he wouldn't even have the chance to escape. As for Taro, he was even more nervous than Zhou Hao, because he could recognize this voice. A graceful figure appeared on the tall tower over there. The person was tall and straight, looking to be in his 30s. He wore a white neutral suit with sharp eyebrows and starry eyes. His face was as clear as jade, and there was even an elegant and exquisite mustache under his nose. He was an extremely charming and handsome man. In particular, the temperament of this person was outstanding. He had the bearing of an expert like Big Boss, and was not used to being a big boss. This person gave people a more elegant feeling. Where did this expert come from? Zhou Hao stared vigilantly at the beautiful man who had made his debut. He secretly sighed in his heart. However, he heard the voice of little Taro gnashing his teeth. "Li, from the clouds." Zhou Hao was also very surprised when he heard the words of the little Taro from the Wind Demon. He didn't expect that this handsome man was the supreme expert that Big Boss had mentioned, the sect master of the Tang sect, Li Tsongya. He remembered that when he first met Big Boss and Taro, he had said this before. In the martial arts world of China, there was something that he was afraid of. One was Big Boss, and the other was Li Tsongya. Furthermore, many years ago, Big Boss had also fought with Li Tsongya. Although he had barely won with half a move, he had still suffered quite a serious injury. After so many years, Li Tsongyun's cultivation must have improved a lot. It was unknown whether Big Boss could still defeat him. 4. Why are all these experts gathered in Indonesia? Zhou Hao muttered in his heart. Li Tsongyun stretched out his right hand, and the surrounding rain lines became stagnant. Li Tsongyun pushed back with his hand, and the rain lines instantly turned into sharp ice arrows, shooting towards the wind demon, Taro, with lightning speed. Flaming Fire Divine Ice Technique. Zhou Hao knew from Big Boss that the ultimate technique of Tang Sect's Li family was the Flaming Ice Divine Art. Now, he finally had the chance to see Li Tsongyun use it. Taro the Wind Devil didn't even think about taking the attack head-on. His figure suddenly disappeared, and he actually ran away without even thinking about it. The sect chief of Tang Sect, Li Tsongyun, was a supreme expert who was at the same level as Zhou Hao and Big Boss. Due to the severe injuries he suffered in the battle with Zhou Hao, he had no chance of winning against Li Tsongyun. Furthermore, the Tang Sect and the Wind Devil clan had been enemies for more than 1,000 years. How could Li Tsongyun let go of Li Tsongyun? Under such circumstances, the Wind Devil didn't hold on any longer. He used the ninja technique to escape. Zhou Hao didn't expect that Taro wouldn't even dare to take a strike from Li Tsongyun. He ran away without any backbone. All the ice arrows shot out by Li Tsongyun hit the spot where Taro was originally standing, creating a huge crater on the roof, raising a cloud of dust. Initially, he thought that Li Tsongyun would immediately chase after the old enemy, the Wind Devil. However, Zhou Hao saw that Li Tsongyun was only standing on the top of the tower, looking at him. After that, he leapt high into the air and flew over to Zhou Hao's side like an immortal. Why didn't you go after the Wind Devil? He is now seriously injured by me. This is a good opportunity to get rid of him." Zhou Hao looked at Supreme Expert, who was even more handsome than himself, and said anxiously. A powerful expert like Windchaser Devil Taro had formed an irreconcilable enmity with Zhou Hao. Just like how he had attacked Zhou Hao didn't want to let go of the opportunity to get rid of him. Li Tsongyun smiled and said, "It's useless. If that guy is determined to escape, don't talk about me. Even if Ame was here, she would not be able to catch up to him. The most powerful thing about this Wind Fiend Taro is actually his escaping skills. Ame. Zhou Hao was stunned for a moment. Didn't you know him? He's the boss of the First Army. Li Songyun said. Zhou Hao realized that Li Songyun was talking about Big Boss. Big Boss's nickname in the martial arts world was Mr. Han Mei. However, Li Songyun called him Ame, which made Zhou Hao quite cold. Since he could not catch up to Wind Fiend Otaro, Zhou Hao could not force Li Songyun. He just felt pity in his heart. Although the Wind Devil was seriously injured by him and was poisoned by the deadly poison, with the Wind Devil's ability, it wasn't difficult for him to expel the poison. After recuperating for a period of time, his internal injuries could also be healed. And now, Zhou Hao could no longer care about building a relationship with Supreme Expert Li Songyun. Outside, the First Army and Li Shuihan were ambushed by the Wind Devil clan and were waiting for him to rescue them. Therefore, Zhou Hao cupped his fists at Li Songyun and turned around to look for Li Shuihan and the others. But just as he lifted his foot, a sense of powerlessness spread throughout his body. The scene in front of him became blurry. His feet were floating, and he was about to fall forward. It turned out that during the intense battle with Feng Imotaro just now, Zhou Hao had used his White Tiger Five Kingdoms sword with his true yuan, causing him to use up all of his genuine auras. His body had already collapsed. A steady and powerful hand grabbed Zhou Hao's shoulder before he fell down. It was Li Songyun. The Zhou Haos in your body have all been used up, and you also have internal injuries. Where else do you want to go? My companions are in danger. I want to save them. Zhou Hao's face was pale without a trace of blood, but his eyes were still firm. Li Songyun secretly praised Zhou Hao's importance to his companions and said, "There's no need for you to go. Those guys from the Wind Devil clan have already been defeated by the people of Tang sect. The people from the First Army are fine. Also, Varanto and Prabowo are under control." Hearing Li Songyun's words, Zhou Hao was overjoyed. He put down the huge rock that was hanging high in his heart and wanted to thank Li Songyun. However, because of the relaxation in his mind, his body could no longer resist the tiredness and fainted. Supporting Zhou Hao, who had lost consciousness, Li Songyun revealed a faint smile. Haha, what an interesting little fellow. When Zhou Hao woke up, it was already 2 days later. Slowly opening his eyes, Zhou Hao found himself lying on the bed, and he was also in the room in the Golden Court building. After regaining consciousness, Zhou Hao's body still felt very tired. However, it was much better than when he was the Warwind Devil Taro. Although the genuine aura in his body had not recovered to its peak state, it was still slowly repairing Zhou Hao's damaged meridians and internal organs like a tiny stream. "Mr. Zhou, you're awake?" Zhou Hao saw a man sitting beside the bed. It was the number 89 from the First Army. Number 89's head was still wrapped in bandages. Clearly, he had been injured in the previous operation, but it was only a minor injury. When Zhou Hao was unconscious, number 89 and another member of the First Army took turns to look after him. When he saw that Zhou Hao had woken up, number 89 shouted out in surprise. "How long have I been asleep? How is Fourth Boss doing? Is she hurt?" Zhou Hao asked weakly. "Mr. Zhou, you have been unconscious for 2 days and 2 nights. Fourth Boss and the others are fine. They were only lightly injured." Without waiting for Zhou Hao to speak again, number 89 said excitedly, "I will go and inform Fourth Boss and the others. Mr. Zhou, you take a rest first." After saying that, number 89 hurriedly ran out of the room to inform Li Shuihan and the others that Zhou Hao had woken up. Lying on the bed, Zhou Hao used the genuine aura to check his body's condition as he recalled the scene of fighting with Feng Imotaro. The Grand Taro Feng Imo was really powerful. Zhou Hao still felt a lingering fear when he thought of his move, the Great Thousand Faces Misty Lotus. If it wasn't for the fact that he had unleashed all of his strength in the face of death, Zhou Hao might have really died in the hands of Taro the Windy Demon. However, after this battle, Zhou Hao had gained a lot. He had fought with a peak expert, and had even gone through the gates of hell. His understanding of the martial way had deepened. During that period of life and death, he had even comprehended the White Tiger Five Kingdoms sword, which was an extremely powerful technique. This White Tiger Five Kingdoms sword had escaped from the tiger play of the Five Birds play, but it was much simpler and more powerful than the tiger play. If he used this skill in his best condition, perhaps even Taro wouldn't be able to block it. That's right. And that Li Songyun, I don't know why he suddenly appeared in Indonesia. Zhou Hao couldn't help but guess when he thought of Li Songyun, who made the grand entrance and scared away the Wind Fiend Taro. Although Zhou Hao had previously won in the competition with the Tang sect's Black Warrior, Sun Linfeng, and obtained Gongsun Linfeng's promise. Zhou Hao and the Tang sect's conflicts were written off. However, Zhou Hao knew that even if he didn't become enemies with the Tang sect, they were still far from being friends. If Li Songyun didn't acknowledge Gongsun Linfeng's promise and wanted to settle the score with him in the future, given his current situation, he was afraid that he wouldn't be a match for Li Songyun. In the midst of his thoughts, footsteps came from outside. Then, he saw Li Shuihan and a few other commanders walk in one after another. Li Shuihan was not seriously injured. She only had bandages on her right wrist and suffered some minor injuries. As for the other commanders, they were in charge of commanding from the rear and did not participate in the frontline operation, so they were not injured either. Seeing that Zhou Hao had woken up but was still weak, Li Shuihan held her hands and snorted. I already said that you could not deal with the Wind Fiend Taro. You must not know your own limitations and get into someone else's trap. You almost killed all of our men. If the Tang sect didn't appear in time to help us repel the Wind Devil clan and capture Varanto, our plan would have been ruined. Let's see how you will explain it to the country. Zhou Hao wasn't angry at Li Shuihan's cold words. He felt relieved when he saw that she was safe and sound, and that she was still scolding him. Furthermore, it was indeed because he did not prepare well that he had been schemed against by little Taro this time. It was those few commanders who helped Zhou Hao put in a good word. General Li, don't blame General Zhou. If it wasn't for him dealing with the Wind Fiend Taro, who here would have been able to withstand a single blow from the Wind Fiend Taro? Besides, that Mr. Li Songyun also said that General Zhou was seriously injured and wanted to save you and your brothers. How could we blame him? Li Shuihan turned her face and said coldly, he just wanted to make up for his mistakes. Facing the stubborn Li Shuihan, the few commanders were helpless and could only smile bitterly. Zhou Hao did not take Li Shuihan's words to heart and asked them, how is the situation outside? A commander smiled and said, controlling the two warlords, Varanto and Prabowo, our plan went very smoothly. With them stabilizing the Indonesian military, the situation in Indonesia will be relatively stable. Moreover, in order to fight for the position of president, these two guys have basically roped in almost all the cabinet members of Congress. Now that we have them under our control, we can use those cabinet members to support Wahid. Where's Suharto? Is he back? Zhou Hao asked again. He's already back, but it's useless for him to come back, because Varanto and Prabowo had already reached a consensus to use this storm to pull Suharto down. Now, Congress had unanimously passed a resolution to force Suharto to resign from his position as president. Suharto's dictatorship over Indonesia has officially become a thing of the past. The commander smiled and said, at the same time, after exposing Suharto's corruption, Wahid has officially walked to the front desk. He bravely exposed Suharto and attacked the image of corruption in the government, making him have a very good reputation among Indonesian citizens and internationally. 1. After listening to their explanation, Zhou Hao knew that Indonesia had started to develop according to his and the central government's plans. He had to thank Li Songyun for his timely help. What about sect leader Li? Zhou Hao asked. Li Shuihan said lightly. He left the day before yesterday. Gone? Zhou Hao was shocked. Other than expressing his gratitude to Li Songyun, who was the sect master of Tang sect, Zhou Hao also wanted to know why he had brought Tang sect to Indonesia. If possible, Zhou Hao also hoped to exchange some martial arts insights with Supreme Expert, who was not weaker than Big Boss and Taro. Li Shuihan held her hands and said, he only came here because he found out that Taro was here. He only helped us when he saw that we were ambushed. Since Taro has escaped now, why is he still here? She glanced at Zhou Hao. Li Shuihan disdainfully smiled and said, don't tell me you think you are some great figure. That sect leader Li will specially wait for you to wake up and personally come to see you. Zhou Hao looked at Li Shuihan somewhat helplessly. He thought that this woman was really rude. The commanders present also knew that Li Shuihan had always disliked Zhou Hao. They could only look at each other and smile bitterly. They did not dare to provoke this female star. At the same time, they secretly sympathized with Zhou Hao. General Zhou, you should take a good rest. Fourth boss will handle the matters outside with us. You don't have to worry. A commander smiled at Zhou Hao and said, there are too many people. We will not disturb you when you rest. If there is anything else, we will not disturb you. Yes. Zhou Hao nodded and smiled. Okay, thank you all. Li Shuihan snorted and was the first to walk out of the room, as if she really did not want to see Zhou Hao. The commanders were still comforting Zhou Hao. General Zhou, General Li, has a stubborn personality. Don't blame her. Actually, when General Li found out that you were seriously injured at that time, he was also very worried about you. Zhou Hao did not comment and only smiled lightly. After that, Everyone left one after another. Number 89 also did not stay here to prevent Zhou Hao from resting. After everyone left, the tired Zhou Hao was once again attacked by sleepiness. He fell asleep in a daze. When he woke up again, it was already past 10 o'clock at night. He also felt much more energetic and less tired. However, the feeling of hunger became very strong because during the 2 days he was unconscious, the people of the First Army used infusion to replenish his nutrition. His stomach was already empty, and with the addition of genuine auras, he had consumed a lot. Zhou Hao felt that at this moment, he could really eat a cow. Just as he wanted to inform the people outside to send some things over, he heard someone knocking on the door before he could reach out and press the button. Before Zhou Hao could call for him to come in, he heard the sound of a lock being unlocked. A tall figure walked in as well. It was Li Shuihan. She was holding a plate in her hand. There was a bowl of steaming hot stuff on it. Zhou Hao looked at her in shock on the bed, and then hugged the blanket to protect his chest. He was afraid of being robbed and said, "You? Why do you have the key to my room?" He saw that Zhou Hao's expression was like a weak woman facing a sex devil. Li Shuihan couldn't help but be furious. She wondered if this role had been swapped. "You are the biggest and most detestable sex devil." After finally suppressing the anger in her heart, Li Shuihan lightly said, "All the rooms of the First Army that live here have backups of keys over there." She put the bowl of things on the table beside the bed. Zhou Hao saw that it was a bowl of fragrant lotus seed bird nest porridge. "You've only been infusing for the past 2 days. You should be hungry." Looking at the bowl of steaming bird's nest porridge and then looking at Li Shuihan, who still had a cold face, Zhou Hao felt warm in his heart. Now he had some understanding of Li Shuihan's temperament. She was a typical person with a sharp tongue and a soft heart. She was not good at expressing her feelings. Previously, she had spoken coldly to him in front of everyone. She looked like she did not like him. It was just a smokescreen on purpose so that others would not doubt their relationship. Zhou Hao had repeatedly violated Li Shuihan. Initially, he was worried that Li Shuihan would really hate him, but now that Li Shuihan had given him food, even if she did not like him in her heart, at least she had not reached that kind of irreparable hatred. "This porridge was cooked by you?" Li Shuihan curled her lips. "I don't have that much time to serve you. It was cooked by the chefs in the kitchen." "Oh," Zhou Hao replied. He pretended to be suddenly enlightened and said, "I knew it. Big Boss told me in the past that you have no talent in cooking. At most, you can use hot water to cook the instant noodles. I guess that you didn't cook the porridge." "You." Li Shuihan was extremely angry and reached out to take the hot porridge away. She said coldly, "If you dislike it so much, then don't eat it. Go and cook it yourself." No, I apologize, okay?" Zhou Hao quickly smiled and said, "We, fourth boss, have a long way to go to deliver food to me. I can't let down fourth manager's heart no matter what, right?" Li Shuihan then put down the porridge and said at the same time, "Don't say that you don't have good intentions. I'm afraid that if you wake up in the middle of the night and get hungry, you will annoy other people. They all have assignments and have no free time to serve you." "Yes, I know. Zhou Hao nodded and smiled. Seeing that Zhou Hao did not touch the bowl of bird nest porridge, Li Shuihan frowned and said, "Why haven't you eaten yet? Don't tell me you don't like lotus seed bird's nest porridge. Your injuries have not fully healed yet. It would be best if it was this kind of light and nourishing food. Don't touch those greasy foods." "No, it's just that I don't have any strength left in my body right now. I can't even move my hands." After saying that, Zhou Hao looked at Li Shuihan with eager eyes. Clearly, he wanted her to feed him. "You." Li Shuihan glared at Zhou Hao angrily, but when she saw that his face was indeed still somewhat pale, she sighed helplessly. She pulled over a chair and sat beside the bed. She picked up the bowl of lotus seed bird nest porridge and put it in front of Zhou Hao's mouth with a spoon. Zhou Hao opened his mouth to take a bite, satisfied. He felt that the porridge was sweet and warm, penetrating his heart and spleen. After taking a bite, he pretended to be in pain and actually took an inch. "Ouch, it's so hot. Can't you blow it?" "What a villain." Li Shuihan cursed fiercely, but still put the porridge in front of her. She carefully blew on it before feeding it to Zhou Hao. To be able to make Li Shuihan, this stubborn and strong woman, serve him like this, Zhou Hao was extremely satisfied, especially that kind of spiritual sense of achievement. It was truly indescribable. In this way, the bowl of lotus seed bird nest porridge was quickly wiped out by Zhou Hao. Li Shuihan said, "If it wasn't for Big Boss asking me to take care of you, I wouldn't have bothered with you." When Zhou Hao heard Li Shuihan's words, his expression first changed, and then he immediately felt relieved. He knew that Li Shuihan was saying something wrong again. Because, if it was just to fulfill the orders of the big boss, Li Shuihan could very well put down the food and leave. She did not need to feed him like she did just now, even though it was Zhou Hao who shamelessly forced her to feed him. However, Li Shuihan that was rarely attentive and gentle just now, Zhou Hao could tell that it came from the bottom of her heart. It was not purely to complete the orders of the big boss. After thinking it through, Zhou Hao's jealousy and anger disappeared without a trace. He said with a smile, "Fourth boss, I saw that you always prioritize the words of the chief head. Do you really have any thoughts about him?" Li Shuihan was furious when she heard this. She stood up and pointed at Zhou Hao and said coldly, "Zhou Hao, Li Shuihan, have already said that if you dare to insult me and Big Boss again, Li Shuihan, will become irreconcilable enemies with you." After she finished speaking, she was about to flick her sleeves and leave. Zhou Hao saw that his joke had really angered Li Shuihan. He hurriedly pulled her hand and explained, Wait, don't be angry. I was just joking. I didn't do it because I cared about you. That's why I'm so nervous about your relationship with the big boss. You're so beautiful. You are so capable. I don't know how many men outside like you. I'm afraid. Sigh, I'm jealous of Big Boss. How can you listen to him like that? Oomph. Li Shuihan shook Zhou Hao's hand away but did not leave. She just stood there with her back facing Zhou Hao. Although Zhou Hao could not see Li Shuihan's expression, seeing that she did not leave, he was delighted in his heart. He reached out and grabbed her wrist to let her sit back on the chair. He saw Li Shuihan turn her face away and not look at Zhou Hao. She still had an angry look on her face. Sorry, fourth boss, don't be angry. Fourth boss, Shuihan, Han. Don't call me so intimate. Who is your Han? Li Shuihan touched the goosebumps on her hands. Zhou Hao also felt that calling her fourth boss was still forceful and calling her Han. Even he himself felt awkward. He saw Li Shuihan suddenly sigh and slowly say, I have been by Big Boss's side since I was very young. At that time, I didn't think I was even 8 years old. I followed him to learn martial arts, study, and even go on missions with him. After that, I naturally joined the First Army under his arrangements. Zhou Hao was really surprised. He did not expect Li Shuihan to be with Big Boss at such a young age. 2. Big Boss is just like my father to me, Li Shuihan said. Zhou Hao suddenly understood. This could explain why Li Shuihan listened to the chief head's words and was especially angry at him for misunderstanding their relationship. So that was the reason. If it was anyone else, they would also be angry when their relationship with their father was insulted. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you and Big Boss. Zhou Hao apologized sincerely. Li Shuihan snorted and glanced at Zhou Hao as if she was saying, You just found out. Then why are you with Big Boss? Where are your parents? Also, what's Big Boss's name? I still don't know. My parents? Li Shuihan frowned slightly, and then a worried look spread across her face. Zhou Hao saw her reaction and knew that she must have something on her mind. He said, Forget it. If you don't want to say it, don't tell me yet. If those memories are not happy, you don't have to open them again. After all, if it wasn't for something happening to her biological parents, why would Li Shuihan follow by Big Boss's side? Li Shuihan originally thought that with Zhou Hao's overbearing and shameless personality, he would definitely force her to tell him these things, but she did not expect him to be so understanding of her. She nodded and said, Yes, one day, I will tell you everything. Then you can tell me Big Boss's name, right? After knowing him for so long, I only know that he is the big boss of First Army and the other name of Mr. Han Mei. Zhou Hao said with a smile. The name of the big boss is Zhong Zongren, but you can't call Big Boss by his name in the future, right? Zhou Hao chuckled and said, Of course not. Big Boss is your father. I should call him Master Taishan. That should be polite. You, don't give me an inch. Li Shuihan raised her eyebrows and glared at Zhou Hao. Zhou Hao was secretly excited. In the past, if he had made such a joke to Li Shuihan, she would have punched and kicked him a long time ago. Now that he had not recovered from his injuries, he could not beat her at all. But Li Shuihan did not touch him. She just stared at him. It could be seen that the relationship between the two was much better than before. Sigh, what a pity. Zhou Hao suddenly sighed and said, I originally wanted to talk to that Li Tsongyan about martial arts, but he left so quickly. It is very hard to meet supreme expert like him. I don't know when we will meet again. Li Shuihan said, There will always be a chance. But that Mr. Li is very appreciative of you. Li Tsongyun really admired Zhou Hao. He had never met someone like Zhou Hao, who had reached this level in his weak years. One should know that he, Li Tsongyun, and Big Boss were both known as rare talents in the martial arts world. This was because it was impossible to achieve such a level of martial arts without deep inner energy, extraordinary comprehension, and sufficient accumulation of martial arts. Looking at the hundreds of years in the martial arts world, supreme expert, who was able to achieve the realm of transforming intent into form, was not only an old man who was over 100 years old, but also someone who had reached the realm of transforming intent into form. Li Tsongyun had fought with Feng and Motaro many times, but neither of them had gained any advantage. This was the first time Li Tsongyun had seen Feng and Motaro suffer such a huge loss. He thought that this was the reason why Li Tsongyun thought highly of Zhou Hao. If it wasn't for the fact that he had important matters to attend to, Li Tsongyun would have waited patiently for Zhou Hao to wake up and have a good chat with him. By the way, did that guy, Varanto, say when did he start colluding with Taro? Zhou Hao asked. When he was at the residence of Varanto, little Taro had said that he had been friends with Varanto for 5 or 6 years. Li Shuihan said, "We have already asked." He said that he and Taro knew each other 6 years ago. He used the power of Taro to get rid of the dissidents. Taro used his power in Indonesia to find something. Find something? Zhou Hao was stunned. What was the wind fiend Taro looking for? Why did he need to use the power of Varanto? Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration in his heart. He looked at Li Shuihan in shock. Could it be that he is looking for? Li Shuihan nodded. That's right. What Fengma Taro is looking for is the Imperial Jade Seal. Back when Zhou Hao met the Wind Devil clan, they were looking for that peerless treasure, the Imperial Jade Seal. Now it seemed that the Wind Devil clan's search for the Imperial Jade Seal had not been a matter of 1 or 2 years. Logically speaking, the Imperial Jade Seal is just an antique, even if it is the symbol of an emperor. But now, it is no longer a feudal society. Other than historical, cultural, and artistic significance, the Imperial Jade Seal has no other value. The Tang sect was a descendant of the Li family of the Tang dynasty, and also the original owner of the Imperial Jade Seals. It was not strange for them to look for Imperial Jade Seals, but what did Fengma Taro want to do? Was he trying to go against the Tang sect, or was he trying to humiliate China? Zhou Hao had once guessed that the Wind Devil clan was trying to humiliate China by searching for the Imperial Jade Seal. After all, the most famous and important national treasure of China had fallen into the hands of the Japanese. It was something that was hard to accept. However, the Wind Devil clan had spent so much time and manpower, and even the Wind Fiend Taro had personally gone out to befriend Varanto in order to find the Imperial Jade Seal. This really made Zhou Hao feel that there was something else hidden behind it. He lowered his head and thought deeply, so he did not see the strange expression on Li Shuihan's face that disappeared in a flash. After a long time, Zhou Hao looked up and said, "Let's not talk about this. Since Varanto is on good terms with Supreme Expert, the little Taro, and also has the help of the Wind Devil clan, why not kill Suharto and Prabowo? With the means of the Wind Devil clan, it is not difficult to kill them without anyone knowing. This way, it will be easier for Varanto to seize the position of president." 0. You're not an official after all, so how can you understand politics? Li Shuihan finally found a chance to laugh at Zhou Hao. Varanto did not kill Suharto and Prabowo because although he is the commander of the Indonesian army, most of Indonesia's military power is controlled by Suharto and Prabowo. If they died, Varanto would not be able to control the other ambitious and powerful warlords. At that time, the situation will only become more complicated, and it will be even harder for him to seize the position of president. Pausing, she continued, "However, over the years, more than half of the military generals of over 20 provinces in Indonesia have been roped in by Varanto. If it wasn't for our participation this time, he would really have sent Tyro Windfiend to kill Suharto and Prabowo." After listening to Li Shuihan's words, Zhou Hao said, "That guy, Varanto, is really cunning." In the original history, Varanto had been ravaged by the financial storm in Indonesia. When Suharto was criticized by many people, he changed sides and gave Suharto the last and most fatal blow, which directly led to Suharto stepping down the stage. After that, Hubby, who took over the presidency, also became a puppet of Varanto. If he had not underestimated Wahid's success in the end, Varanto would very likely have become the second dictator of Indonesia like Suharto, who had absolute control over Indonesia. Right now, in order to seize the position of president, Varanto and Prabowo spared no effort to win over Congress and the military. However, now that they had fallen into the hands of First Army, all their previous efforts had become Wahid's wedding gift. Those people from Congress and the military would all turn to support Wahid under the instructions of Varanto and Prabowo. "Ah, I almost forgot," Li Shuihan suddenly said. "There has been a woman called Li Ruolin calling you these 2 days. But you were still unconscious at that time, so I told you that you can't answer the phone when you go out to do things." "Sister Lon is looking for me?" Li Shuihan took out Zhou Hao's handphone and handed it to him. She has called you more than 10 times these 2 days. Maybe there is something urgent. Zhou Hao thought about it and agreed. If it was not something urgent, Li Ruolin would not have looked for him so urgently. Thus, Zhou Hao immediately dialed Li Ruolin's number. Li Shuihan stood up and wanted to leave. She wanted to avoid Zhou Hao saying that she was eavesdropping on other people's privacy. However, Zhou Hao reached out and pulled her. At the same time, he smiled at the phone. Sister Lan, you were looking for me. Is there something wrong? Being pulled by Zhou Hao, Li Shuihan could only sit back down. She felt a little gratified in her heart because Zhou Hao did not let her go, which meant that he did not treat her as an outsider. What have you been doing these 2 days? I have called more than 10 times. Every time, it was a woman with the surname Li who answered. She said that you went out to do business. Li Ruolin complained on the other side of the phone. It can't be helped, Sister Lan, because these things are all state secrets. During the mission, you are not allowed to contact the outside world. Zhou Hao did not want Li Ruolin to know that he was injured and worried, so he made up a white lie. As for that woman surnamed Li, he looked at Li Shuihan with a smile. He continued, that is my colleague, or my superior. This woman doesn't like my boss. She always gives me the most tiring task. I don't know how much hardship I've been through here. Li Shuihan heard him say this to another woman. She was so angry that she wanted to give Zhou Hao a slap, but when she thought that he was injured, she turned around and pinched his ear. She twisted it hard. This kind of blow naturally did not have any effect on Zhou Hao, but he still deliberately opened his mouth and pretended to be in pain. He heard Li Ruolin on the other side of the phone say, I want to tell you that we have found Yunair's mother. Moreover, Yunair had already gone to America with her mother the day before yesterday. Huh. Zhou Hao was shocked because he had a good impression of Yunair, a cute and lively little girl. He had even fantasized about the plan of forming a loli more than once, but he did not expect Yunair to reunite with her mother and go to America so soon. Li Ruolin said, Yunair's mother found Yunair because she saw the advertisement we posted on the television and newspaper. I wanted to tell you to come back and say goodbye to Yunair, but you were busy with other things. Yunair also did not want to part with you. Zhou Hao was also very reluctant to part with Yunair's innocent and cute face, but he soon felt relieved. He said to Li Ruolin, it's okay, Sister Lan. It's only a 10-hour flight from China to America. We can always go and see Yunair in the future. Did she leave the address of the United States to you? Li Ruolin said, of course she did. It is at the Chinatown in San Francisco. Oh right. I saw that Yunair's mother's financial condition was not very good. After going to America, I'm afraid that she will have difficulties living, so I gave them 5 million. Zhou Hao nodded. He knew that Li Ruolin was talking about 5 million yuan. It was not because Li Ruolin was stingy with money, but because he was afraid that if Yunair and her mother were to be found out that they were rich and did not have the ability to protect themselves, that money would become a disaster for them. 5 million yuan was more than $600,000. Although it was not a lot, it was enough for Yunair and her daughter to live a stable life in the United States. Then this summer vacation, let's go to the United States to see Yunair and her daughter. Li Ruolin said, by the way, when do you plan to come back? Aunt Tong misses you very much. In a few days. The matters here will be settled soon. I will go back when the time comes. Li Ruolin thought that Zhou Hao was still busy with work, so she did not talk to him sweetly like usual. After saying, take care of yourself, she hung up the phone. Zhou Hao thought he was lucky. If Li Ruolin was as gentle and sweet as usual, Zhou Hao wouldn't dare to say those words with Li Shuihan here. Putting down the phone, Zhou Hao looked towards Li Shuihan and saw her slightly lowering her head. The expression on her face was indifferent, as if she didn't listen to him talking on the phone at all. Zhou Hao also would not take the initiative to mention Li Ruolin. Although he did not know if Li Shuihan liked him, if she was really jealous, who knew what this valiant woman would do? Zhou Hao did not say anything, but Li Shuihan opened her mouth. Those numbers on your phone, many of them are your women? Fourth boss, peeking at other people's phone numbers is not a good habit. Zhou Hao smiled bitterly. Sorry, occupational habits. Li Shuihan did not have the slightest intention of apologizing. She shrugged her shoulders non-committally. Zhou Hao also knew about the First Army. Since it was an intelligence agency, it was very normal to eavesdrop on the communication of the target. However, Zhou Hao still felt a little scared when she saw the numbers of many girls on his phone. Fourth boss, are you jealous? Zhou Hao approached Li Shuihan and smelled the natural fragrance on her body. Who would be jealous of you when they have time? Don't take yourself too seriously. Li Shuihan glanced at Zhou Hao. All right, you have eaten your food. You also heard the phone call. I will go back first. She was about to stand up. Wait. Zhou Hao grabbed her wrist. Li Shuihan stared at him. What are you doing? What else do you want? Tell me quickly. Once you're done, I'll go back to sleep. Nothing. I just slept for 2 days. I often see you in my dreams. I miss you. Zhou Hao laughed lightly. If you're tired, then sleep here with me. You don't need to go back. No one knows you came here anyway. Zhou Hao pulled hard and pulled Li Shuihan onto the bed. He also took the opportunity to hug her and smiled. Now I don't have the strength to climb the wall and climb to your room. You have to understand and understand me. Li Shuihan struggled and said angrily, Didn't you get hurt? Why do you keep thinking about this kind of thing? Haha, you don't know. The inner force that I cultivate is a bit special. The more I do this kind of thing, the faster I get better. Zhou Hao smiled. His 2 hands were already peeling Li Shuihan's clothes. What kind of evil martial arts do you practice? Could it be the kind that uses yin to replenish yang? Devil art? Li Shuihan was surprised and bewildered. Of course not. This technique of mine is somewhat similar to the legendary dual cultivation. Come on, fourth boss. This is also beneficial to you. Li Shuihan seemed to have forgotten that the injured Zhou Hao was not her opponent and was still forcefully stripped of his clothes and pressed on the bed like in the past. This seemed to have become a habit of Li Shuihan. Zhou Hao, who had been unconscious for 2 days and 2 nights, was naturally very energetic. His originally weak physical strength also became stronger and stronger as he fought. Li Shuihan, who originally did not take any injuries when catching Prabowo, was tortured by Zhou Hao until she was weak and powerless. After a long time, the 2 of them hugged each other on the bed. Just like before, Li Shuihan would never be hugged by Zhou Hao face to face. She would only leave her back to him. Zhou Hao lightly kissed her pink back and shoulders, licking away the sweat on her pink skin. Fourth boss, when are you going to give me that place too? Zhou Hao left a kiss mark on her snow-white skin. 1. What did Li Shuihan naturally mean? Stop dreaming. I will not give it to you for the rest of my life. Sensing that Zhou Hao was kissing her neck, she twisted her body and said, Don't kiss there. It will be seen by others. The next day, before the sun appeared, Li Shuihan secretly returned to her room to prevent others from finding out that she spent the night in Zhou Hao's room. And after sleeping for 2 days, last night, Zhou Hao, who had eaten and enjoyed Li Shuihan's body, had recovered a lot both physically and mentally. He knew that the dictators, such as Varanto, Prabowo, and Suharto, whose hands were covered with the blood of the Han, were now under the strict surveillance of First Army, so he decided to meet them. No one would object to Zhou Hao's decision, so Li Shuihan would accompany him there. Varanto and the others were still living in their respective residences. No one in the outside world, including Congress and the military, knew that they had fallen into the control of First Army. Moreover, in order to prevent the news from being leaked and Verto and the others from rebelling, the guards who knew the inside story were all secretly taken care of by the First Army. All of them were replaced by the people of the First Army. Under the secret escort of the First Army, Prabowo was brought to the official residence of Varanto and went to see Zhou Hao and the others with him. In the past, the 2 of them had treated each other as their archenemy, but now they had also become prisoners under someone else's order. This made both Varanto and Prabowo sigh with emotion. General Verto, you still came back. When Zhou Hao saw Varanto in the study, he smiled brightly. Varanto snorted. He had been escorted to a safe place by the people from the Wind Devil clan that day, but he was found by a group of people who came out of nowhere. Those Wind Devil clans that protected him were either killed or chased away, so he was brought back. His freedom and life were no longer up to him to decide. Prabowo's experience was similar to Varanto's, but he had never seen Zhou Hao before. He only hated Li Shuihan, who had captured him, to the bone. He wished he could use all the methods he had used on those beautiful girls on Li Shuihan one by one. Zhou Hao did not expect these 2 ferocious warlords to show any friendliness to him. He smiled and said, By the way, Mr. Wahid asked me to thank the 2 of you on his behalf. Thank you for supporting him in his election for president of Indonesia. Bah, Wahid, that traitor. Prabowo cursed angrily. How dare you collude with shameless China monkeys, betraying the interests of the country. Wahid, that stupid pig, will definitely become a sinner of our people. Li Shuihan's face darkened when she heard him insult China. The 2 First Army behind Prabowo immediately held Prabowo down and gave him a few big slaps on both sides of his face, causing both sides of his face to swell up. Zhou Hao smiled and said, Prabowo, you said something wrong. In terms of shamelessness, we Chinese are far from being as shameless as you Indonesian people. On the other hand, Mr. Wahid's origin was Fujian in China, so in terms of bloodline, he is also a part of us. Besides, I can guarantee that under Mr. Wahid's governance, Indonesia's development will be much better than your two subordinates. Compared to Prabowo, Viranto was much calmer. He looked at Zhou Hao and said slowly, "What do you want us to do? You asked me to tell Prabowo to tell Congress and the military to support Wahid. We have already done what you asked. Wahid has now become the most powerful competitor for Indonesia's president. Speak. What do you want us to do?" Mr. Viranto is really quick to speak. Zhou Hao smiled and said, "Although most of the people in the government have already supported Mr. Wahid, the army still supported him. In that area, we need to rule a country. If we can't control the armed forces of the country, this would be a very dangerous thing, and it wouldn't be able to achieve the effect of prohibition, especially in the provinces that were far away from the central government. So, I want the two of you to use your own name to summon the governors who support you here in Jakarta." Viranto and Prabowo immediately knew what Zhou Hao wanted to do. Most of the governors in Indonesia were generals of the army, and they could be said to be the local emperors of military and politics. Zhou Hao had gathered all of them here in Jakarta. He would definitely use force to control these people, and then announce to the public that he would strip them of their official positions and take back their power. After that, he would let those loyal to Wahid take over their positions, so that Wahid could truly control the military and political power of Indonesia. "Despicable Chinaman. You are delusional," the impulsive Prabowo roared. Viranto said, "Prabowo, forget it. We have no choice at all." Viranto and Prabowo's forces were not to be underestimated. Out of the 27 provinces in Indonesia, 20 of their officers had been recruited into their camp. Viranto had 12 provinces supporting him, while Prabowo had 8. As for the cabinet members in the Congress, they had almost all become Viranto and Prabowo's men. In other words, the connections and forces that Suharto had built up over the years were almost divided up by the two of them. Now, after informing Indonesia for several decades, Suharto, who was like an emperor, had been pulled down from the throne. In order to stabilize Indonesia, which was in a precarious situation, Habibie would be the temporary president. This result was decided by many factors. First, although Habibie and Suharto were not related by blood, they were like father and son. Furthermore, Suharto had already decided to let Habibie be his successor. Although Suharto's forces had already been divided by Viranto and Prabowo, the broken ship still had 3 genes of nails. With Suharto's support, Habibie was not alone. On the other hand, Indonesia was like a mess that could collapse at any time. If Wahid took over the presidency after Suharto left the stage, he would immediately become the president. He would have to face all the conflicts in Indonesia, including those who were scheming against him, and those who had accumulated strong resentment due to the economic decline. At that time, Wahid would probably become the target of everyone. Therefore, under Zhou Hao and the others' instructions, Wahid did not immediately fight for the position of president. Those members of Congress, because they had received orders from Viranto and Prabowo, expressed their tacit agreement to Habibie as the temporary president. Whether it was the original history or the present, Habibie had become the shield for the next president, acting as a transitional role. Although Habibie was the president now, the power of the government and military were not in his hands, and he was just a puppet without a name. Furthermore, the Indonesian government had already passed the decision to hold the election half a year later. The election half a year later was the final goal of Wahid and Zhou Hao. According to the order of First Army, Viranto and Prabowo had personally invited the governors who supported them to Jakarta. The commanders of the 20 provinces did not know that Viranto and Prabowo had been controlled. They thought that they were going to fight for the president, so they all came to help. At the appointed time, most of the provincial governors, who were led by military generals, came to Jakarta. One after another, high-end Mercedes-Benz cars drove in from Viranto's residence. Why are General Viranto's guards so unfamiliar? Have they all been replaced? When the governor of Eastern Summons saw that the soldiers and guards in the residence were completely different from the ones he had seen before, he asked doubtfully. The governor of Wandan said, "This is also very normal. The battle between General Viranto and Prabowo has probably reached a white-hot stage. It is hard to guarantee that there are no spies from Prabowo among the guards in the past. It will be safer if all of them take turns." The rest of the people nodded when they heard this. Just as they were about to walk into the inner room, a few soldiers at the door said with a cold expression, "I'm sorry, everyone. In order to protect the general's safety, we can only let you in. As for your bodyguards and guards, please stay outside." What does that mean? Could it be that the general doesn't trust us? The governor of Shinu Shidegara said discontentedly. The soldier was still expressionless. "I'm sorry, this is the general's orders, please understand." Because the general has been assassinated more than 10 times in just 5 or 6 days, we have to strengthen our defense. Even though everyone was still somewhat dissatisfied when they heard this, they also knew that this request was understandable, not to mention that they originally hoped to be able to continue being the feudal ministers and local emperors after the presidency change. Thus, they didn't dare to go against Varanto, so they could only let their bodyguards and accompanying people stay outside. Under the lead of Varanto, they walked in. There was a special meeting room in the mansion. 12 governors were all brought over, and Varanto had been waiting for them at the head seat for a long time. And in the meeting room, there were more than 10 guards with cold expressions on their faces. Everyone thought that it was Varanto who arranged so many people to ensure the safety of this secret meeting, so they did not take it to heart. Among these provincial governors, a few of them were old comrades who had a deep friendship with Varanto. This time, they naturally could not avoid meeting up with each other. At the same time, these few people were also expressing to others that their relationship with Varanto was not ordinary. They sat down one after another. The governor of Eastern Summons smiled and said, "General Varanto, now that old thing Suharto has been pulled down, the position of president is none other than you. I'll congratulate you first." The others also started to flatter Varanto. The governor of Wandin also said, "Although it is hubby who is temporarily taking over the position of president, that kid has always been ambitious and lacking in talent. If Suharto did not support him with all his strength, he would not be considered anything. 4. However, in half a year's time, he will not be able to take advantage of the presidential election. General, rest assured, we will definitely support you to take over the position of president. Thank you for your hospitality." Varanto smiled, but he was sighing in his heart. He paused. He said, "However, Indonesia now has many internal and external problems. Indonesia's economy is rapidly deteriorating due to the financial storm, and the people are very dissatisfied with our government. East Timor is also not peaceful, and those people always want to be independent. On the outside, after the previous conflict, our country's international image has been greatly affected. The countries are also unwilling to provide assistance to us, and some even plan to punish us. Everyone present knew very well about the situation of their country, but they actually didn't care. As long as they could protect their power and wealth, everything else wasn't important to them. Moreover, they believed that since Varanto wanted to be the president, he must have a countermeasure for how to govern Indonesia. Therefore, they did not say anything and looked at him at the same time. As expected, Varanto continued, "If you want Indonesia to walk out of this predicament, I think the most urgent thing is to resolve the internal conflicts within the country. If you want to push outside, you must first settle inside." Governor Wandin quickly tried to please him. "General is right. General must have thought of a way. Just say it. We will do our best to cooperate." "It would be best if everyone is willing to cooperate, I know. Due to Suharto's rebellious actions over the past few decades, the people in the country are very dissatisfied with him. They are even very against military participation in politics." Varanto smiled and said, "I know. Due to Suharto's rebellious actions over the past few decades, the people in the country are very dissatisfied with him. And I think that military participation in politics does have a lot of drawbacks. Therefore, in order for Indonesia to develop smoothly, I would like to suggest to Congress to ban military personnel from becoming high-ranking officials and suppress the trend of military dictatorship." Hearing Varanto's words, the 12 provincial governors present were all shocked, because there were 9 of them who were the commander-in-chief of the local army, and Varanto's point of view was clearly to seize their power. "General, do you mean that you don't plan to run for president?" The governor of Eastern Summons narrowed his eyes and asked, "That's right. I have already decided to support Wahid as the president with all my strength." The provincial head of Wandin suppressed the anger in his heart and said with a solemn face, "General, you asked us all to come here to talk about this matter?" Victor nodded, and then he heard Governor Wandan angrily say, "Humph! I didn't expect that we would actually support a trash like you. All right then, please forgive me for not keeping you company anymore. I'll go to Prabowo's place now and support him as the president." The others also nodded, only to see Varanto shake his head with a bitter smile. "It's useless. Prabowo will do everything he can to support Wahid. You don't have to waste your time." "Wahid? Who is that guy? How can he make you and Prabowo give up the position of president and support him instead?" The governor of Eastern Samaria said in surprise. Varanto did not answer, but slowly shook his head. At this time, he saw the change in expression on his old comrades' faces, so he said, "Friends, I will advise you one round. Don't even think about going back to your respective regions, because right now, your local regime and military power have probably changed owner." "Nonsense. My subordinates are all my trusted aides. With them around, if others want to take my authority, they will have to destroy my entire army. Wandan's governor smiled coldly. Varanto laughed, disappointed that he had failed to live up to his expectations. Haha, don't be so naive. Think about it. As long as you are not around, they can replace you. Do you think they will help you protect your power? Wake up. The one who seized your power is your subordinate. From the moment they entered Jakarta, their territory was destined to no longer belong to them. Varanto knew that the political and military power of these 12 provinces should have fallen under the control of the First Army as scheduled. It was the same for Prabowo. The fate of those 8 provinces was the same. As for the remaining 7 provinces, although they did not support Varanto or Prabowo, Varanto knew. If those few provinces were not bribed with great profits, they would either be sent to Wahid's side, or they would be eliminated by First Army in other ways. Thinking of this, Verto could not help but sigh in his heart. It's over. Our country is going to fall into the hands of those Chinamen. Indonesia is finished. ***. I don't believe that such a large territory of mine will fall into someone else's hands so easily. Wandan's governor pounded heavily on the table. He suddenly stood up and wanted to turn around and leave. However, before he took a step forward, the cold muzzle of the gun was already pointed at his forehead. It was one of the guards in the meeting room. The guard was expressionless. He looked at him with a cold gaze and even opened the safety of the gun in his hand. Governor Wandan immediately did not dare to act rashly. He glared at Varanto and shouted angrily, "Varanto, what do you mean by this? Do you want to seize our power without permission? How are you going to explain to the entire country whether the country will agree to you doing this? Hurry up and tell your men to get out of here." Victor shrugged helplessly. "I can't do that. It's not that I want to make things difficult for you, but the people in this mansion don't listen to my orders. I'm just a prisoner under house arrest." How is that possible? Everyone was shocked once again. Never in their dreams would they have thought that Varanto would also be under house arrest. At this moment, they heard a man's voice coming from outside. "It is not General Varanto who wants to seize your power. It's the country who wants to take back the power that you misuse." A middle-aged man with a medium build walked in from outside. He looked coldly at everyone present and said, "I'll give you 2 choices now. One is to submit your resignation and resign from your position as governor. At the same time, hand over the command of the army. Second, I'll personally sign the order to dismiss you, strip you of your position, and sentence you for corruption and treason." Humph. Actually, even if you don't resign, it doesn't matter. In any case, the control of your 12 provinces has already returned to the country. Habibi, how could it be you? These provincial governors looked at this man in disbelief. This person was Habibi, who had just taken over the position of president of Indonesia. The 12 provincial governors were stunned. In fact, the reason Hubby was able to take over the position of president was not only because Suharto had used his remaining energy to help him, but also because of Zhou Hao and the others. If not for Suharto alone, without the approval of Congress, Hubby would not have had such a chance. Suharto did not know that the Habibi that he had worked so hard to promote had actually been bought over by Zhou Hao, who had foresight. A few years ago, when Suharto had been in power, Habibi had relied on his relationship with Suharto to become the Minister of Finance. However, he had invested a large amount of money to develop a high-tech industry that was not suitable for Indonesia. He had tried to make Indonesia a country that developed rapidly like South Korea and Singapore. However, outsiders were right to judge him for his lack of ambition and talent. This high-tech industry plan had failed in the end. The large amount of money invested in it had also turned into nothingness, causing Indonesia's finances to recover within 10 years. As a result, the military lost a large amount of military funds. Thus, Indonesia's military hated Habibi. A long time ago, Zhou Hao had secretly found Habibi and made him understand that he could not solve the current predicament of Indonesia. As the president, he was only a transitional role for the next generation. Once he lost his power, the military in Indonesia would definitely not let him go. Using this point, Habibi decided to work with Zhou Hao and the government of China behind Zhou Hao, hoping that he could have a good result. With Habibi, the president who had no real power but had legitimate authority, and also knowing that Varanto and Prabowo had already lost their momentum, these provincial governors could only choose to surrender, signing their resignation and handing over the command of the army. Although the political and military power of each province had already fallen into the hands of the First Army, with the resignation of these governors, it would be extremely beneficial in terms of righteousness and public opinion. It could also prevent any complications from arising. As for how to deal with these local emperors who used to tyrannically abuse their power, Zhou Hao and the others had long come to a consensus. At least before Wahid fully controlled the situation in Indonesia, he would not harm them. He would only put them under house arrest in Jakarta. After everything had settled down, they believed that the outside world had long forgotten about these influential people of the past. What would happen to them in the end? Naturally, no one would care. These guys are all as stupid as pigs. After receiving the report from her subordinates, Li Shuihan sneered disdainfully. They didn't even prepare for anything and just accepted the invitation from others to come to Jakarta. They deserve to be robbed of their power. I wonder how these people became local generals. If they were to be sent to the battlefield, they would all be wiped out within 2 days. Zhou Hao chuckled lightly. It's not their fault. Who would have thought that the 2 tigers, Varanto and Prabowo, would become our puppets? Li Shuihan's eyes turned cold. When the situation in Indonesia is stable, I will kill the 2 beasts, Varanto and Prabowo, with my own hands. I will avenge the deaths of Deng Din and those Chinese people who died because of them. Although it was Francis who killed Deng Jin, the main culprits were still Varanto and Prabowo, who were controlling everything behind the scenes. 5. If it wasn't for their value, Zhou Hao wouldn't have let them stay in this world for 1 more day. Li Shuihan looked at Zhou Hao and saw that his spirit was much better than 2 days ago. She said, "Your body has almost recovered. Yes, the injuries on your body are no longer serious, but your strength has not fully recovered. I'm afraid it will take a few more days for you to return to your peak state." Zhou Hao smiled at Li Shuihan and said, "Haha, 4th boss, you are so concerned about me. I am really flattered." Li Shuihan looked at her subordinates around, and her face immediately turned cold. "Who has time to care about you? You said you wanted to meet Suharto. I was afraid that you would faint on the way because of your injuries. That would be embarrassing." Under the sympathetic gaze of the members of First Army, Zhou Hao followed Li Shuihan to Pang Jinting's house because Suharto was in Pang Jinting's house now. This dictator, who did not know that Verto, Prabowo, and Hubby had already turned against each other, even planned to get Pang Jinting and the Huangs to transfer all the money he had left in Indonesia. When Zhou Hao and Li Shuihan arrived, they saw Suharto throwing a tantrum at Pang Jinting arrogantly. "Pang Jinting, what do you mean now? Don't forget that your Golden Court Corporation has today's climate. It's all because of my support. Even now, not to mention when I was in power, as long as I say something, I can guarantee that your Golden Court Corporation will be destroyed immediately. Do you believe me?" Suharto spoke in Indonesian, but Zhou Hao could only understand it through number 89's translation. After seeing Zhou Hao and his group, Suharto looked at them arrogantly and snorted. "Who are you, Pang Jinting's friends?" Zhou Hao looked at the thin old man and thought about the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Indonesian people. The blood that was left behind was enough to dye the entire Jakarta red. His heart was filled with anger. This beast, who treated the Indonesian men like dogs, made Zhou Hao hate him even more than the Japanese. Without saying another word, Zhou Hao took a few steps forward and punched Suharto in the face. Although Zhou Hao's inner energy had not fully recovered, his fist was not something that Suharto, an old man who had passed the age of heaven's mandate, could withstand. Zhou Hao broke his nose on the spot and fell heavily on the ground with blood all over his face. Suharto's 2 bodyguards were about to pull out their guns, but before their guns left their covers, they heard 2 light sounds. A bloody hole appeared on the foreheads of the 2 bodyguards, and they fell straight to the ground. Li Shuihan took the guns back into her arms and said to the stunned Pang Jinting, "President Pang, I'm sorry, I dirtied your place." Pang Jinting was stunned for a moment, then he shook his head with a bitter smile. "It's okay." He knew that the First Army was planning to break all pretense of cordiality with Suharto. At most, they would put Suharto under house arrest, just like how they treated the provincial governors of different provinces. Anyway, the situation in Indonesia was basically under the control of the First Army. There was no need to be afraid of Suharto, who had become a toothless tiger. Suharto did not expect Zhou Hao and the others to kill his men in front of him. It was not until the people of First Army dragged the corpses of the 2 bodyguards away that he gradually realized what had happened. "Pang Jinting, you want to rebel." Suharto climbed up from the ground in a sorry state. He shouted at Pang Jinting hysterically. Pang Jinting took a sip of tea and said lightly, "This is the opposite. We should have built it a few decades ago. We don't want so many of our compatriots to die in your hands." "Pang Jinting, you." Suharto covered his broken nose and finally felt that something was wrong. "Suharto, I have heard of you for a long time. Many years ago, I have heard about you in China. Everyone says that you are a butcher who kills people for fun." Through number 89's translation, Zhou Hao sneered at Suharto. Li Shuihan, who was beside him, glanced at Zhou Hao. She thought to herself, just make it up. Many years ago, you were still not a little kid. Who are you? Suharto pointed at Zhou Hao and Li Shuihan and asked. First Army had secretly entered Indonesia. Suharto had just returned from a foreign country not long ago, and the moment he came back, he was left behind. Therefore, during this period of time, there was a hidden storm of power in Indonesia. He was dumbfounded. He did not know about the existence of the First Army, nor did he know what the First Army had done in Indonesia. Zhou Hao did not have the interest to explain to Suharto. He just smiled and said, your family is the #1 family in Indonesia. I heard that all of your family's assets add up to more than 20 billion US dollars. I wonder if it's true? Upon hearing Zhou Hao's words, Suharto immediately thought that Zhou Hao was after his wealth. He pretended to put his hand into his pocket carelessly. At the same time, he said, I don't understand what you are talking about. I have been working hard for Indonesia's prosperity and stability all my life. I am honest and just. How could I have so much money? Even though Zhou Hao had lived 2 lives, he had never seen a person who could be so shameless. Zhou Hao was sincerely impressed by Suharto, who did not know what shame was. He smiled at Suharto and said, Suharto, you don't have to waste your energy. I know you have a transmitter that can let your men know where you are. However, let's not talk about the fact that we have installed an electromagnetic jammer here. You can't contact the outside at all. Also, even if your subordinates knew that you're here, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Suharto couldn't help but be shocked when he saw that Zhou Hao had immediately seen through his intentions. He saw Zhou Hao leisurely sitting on the sofa beside Pang Jinting. Immediately, a servant brought him fragrant tea. Zhou Hao smiled at the stunned Suharto and said, if you know what's good for you, hand over your money as compensation for the crimes you have committed in the past few decades. Otherwise, humph, humph, humph. Most of this old B******'s money is in the Swiss bank, and those banks in South America that are controlled by drug dealers are very convenient for laundering money. Their Chamber of Commerce had helped Suharto's family launder for quite some time, so they were very clear about Suharto's situation. But those in the bank are just ordinary currencies, a total of about 5 to 6 billion USD. His greatest wealth is the shares of the monopoly companies in Indonesia, including telecom, mining, construction and road, port and oil. Conservatively, the total value is about 12 billion US dollars. Although Suharto did not understand Mandarin, he knew that Pang Jinting had told Zhou Hao about his financial situation. He was about to pounce on Pang Jinting and shout at the same time, Pang Jinting, I will kill you. 2 men from the First Army immediately pressed on his shoulder, making him unable to move. Brother Zhou, although our merchant association helped this old beast to launder money, this old beast does not trust us. So what we can come into contact with is only a portion of his money. There are also some that he handed over to the Li Guangyao family in Singapore to manage. Pang Jinting said to Zhou Hao, in fact, not only that old B******starred Suharto, but also many corrupt officials in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. Many of them handed over their stolen money to Li family for bleaching, as well as the illegal money. In fact, the Temastan Holdings controlled by Li Guangyao's family is the largest money laundering organization in Southeast Asia. Even some armed organizations and gangs in the Middle East and Western Europe are their clients. Zhou Hao smiled. I have heard about this too. In fact, Singapore, this city-type country, relied on money laundering to develop itself. In his previous life, Zhou Hao had a certain understanding of Li Guangyao's family and the Temastan Holdings under their control. The Temastan Holdings was the largest company in the new wave. It controlled dozens of Singapore's state-owned enterprises and hundreds of subsidiaries. It had a total of 50 billion US dollars, and the assets under its control exceeded 100 billion US dollars. It could be said that the economy of Singapore was mostly supported by the Temastan Holdings. Moreover, Temastan's investment range was far from limited to Singapore. Even in China, Temastan's full capital real estate company was one of the few big companies in China's real estate industry. It was not inferior to Huang Wang's Yellowstone Group at all. Even in America, Europe, and other countries, the Temastan had invested in many companies. However, just like Suharto in Indonesia, Singapore was completely under the rule of the Li family. Moreover, the Li family's rule over Singapore was far more stable than Suharto's rule over Indonesia. Li Guangyao also had a far greater foresight than Suharto. His political skills were not lacking in iron and steel, but they were also full of smooth and sophisticated ways of the world. He was even more adept at using schemes and tricks. He had completely inherited the characteristics of China's good at fighting. Singapore was actually the kingdom of the Li family, and the Timastin controlling the company was actually the Li family's treasury. Li Guangyao's two sons, Li Xianlong, Li Xianying, and Li Xianlong's wife were all holding high positions in the company. However, Singapore was one of the richest countries in Asia, and Li Guangyao was the greatest contributor. If it was in a feudal society, he would be considered the greatest contributor. It was not an exaggeration to call him a ruler, even if he used any means to achieve his goal. Furthermore, Li Guangyao's eldest son, Li Xianlong, would take over the position of prime minister in 2004, just like the Jin family in North Korea. The country was always under the control of the same family. Pang Jinting said with a solemn expression, "The Timastin is much stronger than our Indonesian Chamber of Commerce. Even the Chamber of Commerce in Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines combined might not be as strong as the Timastin." All this time, the competition between the Timastin and us in Indonesia has been very fierce. If it wasn't for the local advantage, we would have been beaten up by the Timastin. If we want to obtain political power in Indonesia and become the mainstream economy in Indonesia, the Timastin will be a big obstacle. Zhou Hao also deeply agreed. Although Li Guangyao did not support Suharto and other anti-Hua forces to harm the Hua people, his attitude towards the government of China and his political standpoint were all disgusted by Zhou Hao. In China, many people were dissatisfied with the party, but the party was after all the ruling party of China, and it also represented the regime of China. However, Li Guangyao was a very typical anti-communist. He also had quite a bit of hostility towards China. Furthermore, his character was not that good. In the original history, when the Tsinghua University riot occurred in Indonesia in 1998, Singapore announced to the public that it would open up all flights to Indonesia and accept Indonesian people to take refuge there. But in reality, if Indonesian people really wanted to take refuge in Singapore, they would have to pay millions of yuan in immigration investment funds, which was also known as entry vouchers. Therefore, the only people in Singapore who welcomed immigrants were the wealthy Chinese, who hoped that they could bring their wealth to Singapore as well. Now, not only did Pang Jinting and the Indonesian people want to obtain enough political power to protect themselves, China also hoped that the Indonesian people could become the leading political and economic power in Indonesia. In order to achieve this goal, they needed to increase the economic strength of the Indonesian people led by Pang Jinting and the others. This would make it easier for them to obtain political power. Due to Li Guangyao's political standpoint and the fact that China did not want others to snatch the cake from him, they would have to fight with the Timastin controlling company. The best result is that we can completely control Indonesia's economy and reduce Timastin's influence in Indonesia to the lowest. Or, we can drive Timastin out of Indonesia. Zhou Hao narrowed his eyes and said, "As for Indonesia, this alluring cake, if China obtained it, Zhou Hao would also have a share. This was related to his own interests, so he spared no effort." "I object." The one who raised the objection was Li Shuihan. Zhou Hao and Pang Jinting both looked at her and heard her say, "Timastin has a lot of businesses in the country, and it has a lot to do with the economy in the country. Their effect on the economy of our country cannot be underestimated. If they knew that China was involved in the Indonesian crisis and chased them out of Indonesia, I'm afraid it would make them unhappy. It's hard to guarantee that they would not withdraw their investment in our country in a fit of anger, and even affect our diplomatic relationship with Singapore." Humph, humph, humph. Our country's economy is developing so quickly, and the prospects are huge. I don't believe that Li Guangyao would be so stupid as to withdraw his investment. Zhou Hao sneered. As for diplomatic relations, there is no need to worry about it. It is just a mere Singapore. So what if we cut ties? The ones who are afraid of affecting our relationship should be them, not our country. Moreover, without Suharto, the biggest customer, the money laundering market in Indonesia will be useless to Li Guangyao. After a pause, Zhou Hao continued, "I know that Li Guangyao also wants those Indonesian monopoly companies under Suharto, but since we are here, can we let them join in?" The central government and Zhou Hao valued the monopoly industries the most, especially the oil and natural gas mines in Indonesia. This was also the central government secretly sending troops to eliminate Suharto, Wiranto, and the others. The most direct reason why they supported Wahid and Pang Jinting as the spokesperson for their interests. Therefore, how could the central government and Zhou Hao allow Li Guangyao to take over this forbidden zone? President Pang, don't worry. I can assure you right now that the central government will definitely agree to help you chase Timastin out of Indonesia. Zhou Hao smiled and said, "Fourth boss, in terms of military and assault, you are an expert. I know that I am not as good as you, but in terms of economy, forget it." "You." Li Shuihan's face darkened and she held her hands. "Anyway, I am against fighting with the Timastin." Zhou Hao naturally thought that Li Shuahan's objection this time was just a performance that she was used to playing against him. He did not mind it at all. He only smiled and said, "It's useless even if you object. As long as the command from the central government is given, it will be difficult for Tim Aston to gain a foothold in Indonesia. Brother Zhou, I think the most important thing right now is to give up the shares of this old B** starred. With a few major Indonesian companies, we can basically control the economic lifeline of Indonesia." Pang Jinting said, "But there is a problem. The shares of those companies are formed. Other than this old beast and his family, the rest of the shareholders are foreign companies. Tim Aston also has a small portion of the shares. What should we do with it?" Zhou Hao smiled. "That is very simple. We can expose Suharto's crimes through the president and Congress. We can judge that many of his policies during his governance are illegal, and the new government will not recognize him. Then we can openly take back the shares of those companies. Moreover, we can also take the opportunity to abolish the old man's exclusion policies. Wouldn't that be killing two birds with one stone?" Pang Jinting frowned when he heard that. However, there are many financial groups in those foreign companies, especially some companies that are quite influential in the United States. We will take back those shares. Why would they agree? If the United States stands up for them and mobilizes the Pacific Squadron, the pressure will be huge. Humph, humph, humph. Zhou Hao suddenly laughed. He then asked number 89 to translate his conversation with Pang Jinting to Suharto, who was being restrained. Then, he said to Suharto, "China is currently negotiating with the Indonesian government, which is to allow the Indonesian government to allow East Timor to be independent." Suharto immediately said angrily, "You China people who have killed thousands of people, why do you care about Indonesia's internal affairs? You are splitting the territory and sovereignty of our country. What right do you China have?" All this time, East Timor had been a huge headache for the Indonesian government. Previously, it had been colonized by Britain, Holland, and the other countries. Until the 1970s, it was still under the colonization of Canada. Later, after the movement of the armed forces broke out in Canada, and after the Jamaican people overthrew the dictatorship, they pushed for democracy and non-colonization. East Timor also had a chance to regain freedom. However, at that time, Indonesia had sent troops to occupy East Timor, and Indonesia had forcefully declared East Timor as its 27th province. From then on, it had always been ruled by Indonesia's armed forces. Over the years, many riots and conflicts had occurred in East Timor. They had tried to break away from Indonesia's rule, but Suharto had refused to let go. He had even insisted on carrying out a cruel armed suppression on East Timor. The United Nations had advised Indonesia to withdraw many times, but Suharto remained indifferent. "Why?" Zhou Hao said, "You didn't forget, did you? China is one of the permanent members of the United Nations. It is obligated to protect the democracy and freedom of the people of East Timor, and also responsible for the peace of Southeast Asia. I think you don't know yet, but today, President Habibie of Indonesia and Congress have agreed to our request to allow East Timor to hold a national vote to decide whether East Timor will continue to accept Indonesia's rule or independence. For a democracy, if more than half of East Timor's people agree to be independent, Indonesia will unconditionally withdraw its troops from East Timor and return the regime to the people of East Timor. Moreover, the United Nations has already received reports on this and is now preparing for the matter of East Timor's independence." Nonsense. How could hubby agree to this? You're talking nonsense. Suharto was like a roaring beast. He knew very well that East Timor had experienced decades of bloody rule in Indonesia. It had long desired independence and would not be willing to accept Indonesia's rule. When the time came, more than 90% of the people would agree to independence. Zhou Hao did not pay attention to Suharto's hysterical cries. Instead, he turned to Pang Jinting, who also did not know what was going on, and said, "Our people have already talked to East Timor. After leaving Indonesia's rule, East Timor will officially establish diplomatic relations with our country. They are willing to accept our country's army to protect their homeland's safety and internal security. Our country will also provide economic development, infrastructure construction, basic life protection, and other support to East Timor's people. In order to ensure East Timor's homeland and territorial sea safety, our country will build a navy base in East Timor and send a fleet over to guard it." Pang Jinting only knew about this matter now. It was probably because this matter was important and the central government needed to ensure that it was confidential, so they did not let outsiders know about it. Pang Jinting was both excited and shocked by this matter. This was because once China stationed troops in East Timor, it would become a great deterrent and deterrent force to Indonesia's military forces. At this stage, Indonesia's military still had a lot of influence, and their attitude towards Indonesia was not good. Therefore, before Pang Jinting's influence completely seeped into the military, Indonesia's safety still had some risks. No one could guarantee that some crazy warlords would suddenly start carrying out bloody assaults on Indonesia. With the presence of the China army, once the Indonesian people encountered any danger, the China army would be able to provide assistance in a very short period of time. On the other hand, the existence of the China army also provided Wahid with a strong backing. It would help him suppress the Indonesian military forces and make it easier for him to regain control of the Indonesian military forces. What shocked Pang Jinting was that China had spared no effort to participate in Indonesia's crisis. Obviously, it was not only to help Indonesia, but also to obtain Indonesia's resources. 6. Now, it seemed that China was planning to use East Timor to expand her control over the South China Sea and Southeast Asia Sea. East Timor was a natural deepwater port with excellent strategic geographical conditions. If they built a navy base here, they could easily grab the throats of the nearby Southeast Asia Sea and tie down the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. This was extremely beneficial to China's navy. Pang Jinting had previously heard that China's navy had a Deep Blue plan. Now it seemed that China was going to use East Timor as their first deployment target to carry out this plan. In fact, Big Boss, Zhong Zhongren, had suggested this plan to the central government after Zhou Hao had suggested the Indonesian plan. Although Zhou Hao had been reborn, it had to be said that his military attainment and vision were not very high. It was only after Big Boss had mentioned it that he remembered in his previous life. Many military experts expressed that East Timor's strategic position on the sea was very important. As for how important it was, Zhou Hao did not know. This also showed that the chief's strategic eyes were very sharp. After he made this suggestion, Chief Jiang, Boss Zhu, Zhao Rixin, and a few other important leaders were immediately moved. They would immediately let people confirm the feasibility of this plan. Then they would pass the decision and assign the First Army to carry it out. Before this riot happened, Wahid was escorted to East Timor by the First Army under the lead of their third master's birthday celebration. Therefore, when Wahid exposed the dirty inside information of Suharto's government to the whole world through the media, Viranto and Prabowo had not been able to find him. At that time, Zhu Shoujing found the leader of East Timor's Independent Revolutionary Front. He represented China and East Timor's Independent Revolutionary Front, as well as Wahid, who would become Indonesian president, and held a three-way meeting. Finally, they reached a consensus and confirmed what Zhou Hao had said. Zhou Hao said to Pang Jinting, "Elder Pang, think about it. With our China fleet here, although we might not be able to defeat the Pacific Squadron, the United States still needs to weigh the pros and cons. Let's see if there is a need to provoke a company that is not strong enough to affect the political world. Moreover, if the United States starts a conflict with China in this aspect, it will show that it will completely fall out with China. Does the United States have the courage to force China, who has nuclear weapons, to join hands with Russia to fight against them? Unless we completely offend big consortiums like Rockefeller and DuPont, who are able to influence the politics of the United States. Otherwise, the United States will not casually send troops. Since the United States will not take the lead, the other companies will naturally not casually take the lead." Zhou Hao smiled and said, "So, other than protesting, those foreign companies do not have the support of military forces. We do not need to care about them." Pang Jinting also heaved a sigh of relief. Indeed, with the support of China's navy, those foreign companies that were forced to withdraw their shares would not be able to threaten them. At most, they could only sanction Indonesia's products. After we take control of those companies and Wahid, all the resources mined in Indonesia will be used to supply China's market. Zhou Hao said, then we don't have to worry about those people's economic sanctions. China was in urgent need of Indonesia's mineral resources. Even if those foreign companies did not make economic sanctions, China would not let those resources flow to other places. Elder Pang, the central government has already come up with a plan. After all the shares have been taken back, the foreign companies and Tim Aston will belong to the Indonesian government. This is to prevent the population from falling. This portion of shares will take up about 30% to 40%, while the remaining 60% to 70% will belong to the companies controlled by the central government and 20% will belong to your China Chamber of Commerce. My company will be the last 10% to 15%. Do you think this plan will work?" Zhou Hao said. Pang Jinting thought for a while and immediately smiled. "Sure, I agree with this plan." Li Shuihan glanced at Zhou Hao and looked at his smile. She snorted in her heart. This is simply dividing the spoils. As they discussed how to split up the most important monopoly companies in Indonesia, Pang Jinting said to Zhou Hao, "But even if we can get hubby and Congress to agree to give us those shares. However, If the Indonesian government were to transfer these shares to us for free, I'm afraid the Indonesian people would not agree. Although hubby can help us take on most of the conflicts, if the people's support for the Indonesian government falls, I'm afraid it will be hard to deal with when Wahid comes to power in the future. Zhou Hao smiled and pointed at Suharto. Don't worry, we have a rich man there, right? You just said that he has 6 to 7 billion USD worth of assets in the Swiss bank and other places. Humph, humph, humph. After we collect this money, we can use it as funds to buy shares. Of course, the credit of this investment to save Indonesia's economy must be credited to Wahid. Pang Jinting suddenly understood and looked at Suharto with a smile. I'm just afraid that he won't hand over the money. According to Zhou Hao's instructions, while Zhou Hao and Pang Jinting were talking, Number 89 translated their conversation to Suharto. Listening to Zhou Hao and Pang Jinting discussing how to seize his assets in front of him, Suharto's face turned green and white. When Zhou Hao and the others said they wanted Suharto to hand over all the money in the bank, he did not get angry. Instead, he laughed. You want to take my money? Keep dreaming. Humph, humph. If you have any tricks up your sleeve, then use them. Although I am old, I am still an Indonesian soldier. Let's see if I will frown. As a dictator who relied on a coup to seize the country, Suharto had been tortured when he was in the military. Therefore, he had a strong resistance to physical pain. Zhou Hao knew what Suharto was thinking, so he smiled and said, I think you misunderstood. We won't do anything like torture and interrogation to you. It's boring. Suharto raised his head when he heard Zhou Hao's words. It was as if he had returned to the era when he was in the military. I know you are a strong soldier, but a soldier also has family. Zhou Hao laughed. He saw more than 20 people, old and young, being brought in by the First Army. They were all tied up by ropes. Their hair was messy, and they kept crying. Suharto's facial expression changed drastically when he saw these people. He shouted excitedly, You devils! You are so despicable! More than 20 people, old and young, were from Suharto's family, including his children, grandchildren, and great-grandsons and daughters, who were only a few years old. Suharto's entire family had been brought here. Not a single fish escaped the net. He looked at Suharto's family, which was in a very sorry state. Pang Jinting looked at Zhou Hao with doubt. Zhou Hao said, This old man sent his family overseas long ago. He was afraid that if he lost his power, he would get revenge from his enemies. If he knew that Habibi had joined our camp, I'm afraid even he would have fled. But he didn't expect that our people would have been monitoring their families' every move. Just last night, our people captured their entire family from Switzerland. Then, Zhou Hao stared at Suharto with a cold gaze. Do you want to think about it again and hand over the money? Suharto's face turned ashen. He was a cold dictator and a soldier with iron and blood, but for his family, even steel had to melt into molten iron. However, that was more than 7 billion US dollars. It was the guarantee for his family to live overseas in the future. Without these words, how could they get used to the extravagant lifestyle? Less than 30 seconds after he thought about it, Zhou Hao raised his hand. Number 89, who was behind him, took out his pistol and killed Suharto's second son without saying a word. This change made Suharto's family, who were tied up together, even more afraid. Their cries became even more miserable. They kept begging Zhou Hao and the others for mercy, but Zhou Hao ignored them. If you still don't make a decision, your eldest son will be in trouble. Zhou Hao's smile was very bright. However, not only Suharto, even Pang Jinting felt that Zhou Hao was like a death god looking at a sickle. Li Shuihan and the rest of the First Army were expressionless. Suharto looked at his second son lying in a pool of blood with a pale face. He asked Zhou Hao, Did I hand over the money? Can you let me and my family go? Zhou Hao did not deny it, but the smile on his face remained the same. Suharto let out a long sigh and sat down on the ground dejectedly. Then, he told everyone his account number and password. The people from the First Army also quickly noted it down. After a few hours, the First Army transferred the money Suharto put in the banks of each bank. A total of 7.30 billion US dollars was transferred to the accounts they had prepared and used to buy the shares. Suharto, who had been famous in Indonesia for more than 30 years, was now like a defeated rooster. He looked down at Zhou Hao. He said in a desolate tone, All right, I have gotten what you want. Then you should be able to keep your promise and let go of me and my family. When did I say I would let go of your family? Zhou Hao said with a sneer. Suharto and his family members looked at Zhou Hao in disbelief. Suharto's eldest son and eldest daughter shouted at the same time. Didn't you say you would spare us? You went back on your word. You liar. Despicable liar. The fear of death made them burst into tears. They had completely lost the dignity of the high and mighty number one family in Indonesia. As for the children who were only a few years old and had just started to remember things, they could feel the panic and fear of the adults and began to cry out loudly. Suharto also tried his best to break free from the grip of the First Army. He raised his head and roared at Zhou Hao. Are all of you Chinese bullying the weak like this? They are all unarmed civilians. What kind of man are you to kill them? If you have the guts, then kill me. Don't be so despicable as to attack my family. Ha 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 ha. Zhou Hao suddenly raised his head and laughed. Then he stared at Suharto with a gloomy gaze. To think that you have the face to say such words. In the decades you have been in power, how many unarmed civilians have died under your hands, or because of you? How many of them are old, weak, women, and children who have no ability to resist? Do you know how to protect your family? There are more than 10 million Chinese families that have been destroyed by you. You also have the right to ask me to spare your family? Zhou Hao hated Suharto to the bone. His hatred was even stronger than Huang Wank and Zheng Ying, who had killed him. Zhou Hao's original understanding of Tsinghua University was only limited to the limited online news and some photos in his previous life. But now, he had personally witnessed how Indonesian people died at the hands of those inhumane butchers. Moreover, the largest proportion of victims were not the young men, but the women and children who had died without any ability to resist. According to the investigation of the International Human Rights Organization, in the 30 years that Suharto had been in power, the number of people killed had reached 500,000. This was only a conservative estimate, and the exact number was only a lot more. This had already exceeded the period of the war against Japan. The number of deaths in the Nanjing massacre had exceeded the number of people killed in the war. Moreover, Suharto's massacre of the Indonesian people was not a so-called war act. Those hundreds of thousands of people had died in a peaceful era. Since there was a chance now, Zhou Hao naturally would not let Suharto go. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to pass this trial, even the heroic spirits of the hundreds of thousands of Indonesian people would not forgive him. As for Suharto's family, other than those children, everyone's hands were stained with the blood of the Chinese, so there was no need for sympathy. Zhou Hao said to Suharto, "Not only do I want you to lose all your power and wealth, I also want to use you and your family to pay tribute to those Huangs who died in your hands. But you don't have to feel lonely. When Viranto and Prabowo are of no use to you, none of them will be able to escape from those executioners who have the right to slaughter the people of China. They will all go to hell to accompany you. Please, I beg of you, if you have any grudges, just blame it on me. Please let my family go." Facing the safety of his family, Suharto finally let go of all his dignity and pride. He kept kowtowing to Zhou Hao. Li Shuihan, who was beside Zhou Hao, also said, "Zhou Hao, those adults can be ignored, but those few children?" Zhou Hao raised his hand to stop Li Shuihan's words and said lightly, "Think about Deng Deng, and those Mandarin children who died tragically. Moreover, those few children are starting to remember things. They have already recognized us. It is hard to guarantee that they will not find an opportunity to take revenge in the future and harm the Mandarin again. Benevolence to the enemy is cruelty to oneself. We must remove the roots of the grass from the roots." Thinking of the miserable death of Deng Deng and those Han children who had not registered yet but had already died under the butcher's knife, Li Shuihan finally took back her last trace of pity and did not plead for Suharto's great-grandsons and children anymore. Zhou Hao looked at Suharto and said faintly, "Don't worry. At least I will be more merciful than you. I won't let you die in too much pain. Our people have prepared a special medicine for you. Don't be afraid. In just 2 seconds, it will be like sleeping. You won't feel pain." Then he said to number 89, "After we are done, arrange the scene properly." Then announced to the outside world that Suharto committed suicide out of fear of being pressured by the domestic and foreign forces. When the Indonesian national television station reported that Suharto had committed suicide out of fear of crime, there was an uproar both internally and externally. The Indonesian people, who already hated him very much, felt great and at the same time scolded Suharto for being a coward who did not dare to take responsibility. After Suharto's death, the interest groups that originally depended on him and wanted him to make a comeback finally dispersed. Wahid also took the opportunity to ask the government and Congress to investigate Suharto's criminal behavior during his reign. Habibie listened to the First Army, and the members of the Congress were also controlled by Viranto and Prabowo, which meant that they were indirectly controlled by the central government. Plus, no one was willing to stand up for the dead Suharto anymore. Therefore, the so-called investigation was just a formality. In less than a week, Wahid, as the representative of the public opinion, announced all of Suharto's crimes. Habibi also officially announced that the new government would not recognize part of the policies that Suharto had implemented during his reign. First, it would abolish most of the anti-Hua policies. As for those companies with high positions, they needed to take care of them slowly. They could not rush it. Anyway, with the secret support from China, as long as they followed Zhou Hao's plan, there would not be any big problems. As time passed, Zhou Hao and Pang Jinting's actions in Indonesia's financial market also entered the final stage. Because of the financial storm in Asia, and with Zhou Hao and the others adding fuel to the fire, Indonesia's economy had fallen to the bottom. There was no more profit to be gained. Moreover, although Zhou Hao had originally planned to take advantage of Indonesia's deteriorating economy to let China completely control Indonesia's economic lifeline, if Indonesia's economy was ravaged too excessively, even if the people here wanted to develop, they would not be able to do so. This time, in Indonesia's financial market, Zhou Hao had invested nearly $10 billion, as well as the 50 billion renminbi that the central government had secretly entrusted to him, as well as the participation of Indonesian Chamber of Commerce. Their profits were even more than George Soros's leading financial market, and their profits were more than 50%. Li Shuihan's voice echoed in the dark room, and it was obvious that she had deliberately suppressed it. Just like before, Li Shuihan was lying on the bed with her head down, while Zhou Hao was lying on her back, exercising rhythmically. The bed underneath also trembled. After a long time, that soul-stirring voice finally quieted down. Zhou Hao still held Li Shuihan, who was soft all over, in his arms like before. His hands naturally did not have free time either. He freely swam on Li Shuihan's smooth and soft jade body. Fourth boss, I really feel that your legs are the most beautiful out of all the women I have seen. It feels good to the touch. TSK, I really can't bear to let go of my hands. Zhou Hao whispered into Li Shuihan's ear. Li Shuihan patted the wolf claw on her leg, but it did not fall off. She said unhappily, "Don't touch randomly. Be careful that I will kick you down." Zhou Hao had long been immune to Li Shuihan's harmless threat. Not only did he not restrain himself, he even reached up to the most mysterious holy land. Imagining the delicate flower path that no one had touched before, Zhou Hao wanted to break her sooner or later and make this woman completely submit to him. "You can't go back for a short period of time?" Zhou Hao asked Li Shuihan. "I heard from the third master that you are going to stay here with him until Wahid can completely control Indonesia and China's forces and stabilize here." Li Shuihan had her back to Zhou Hao. She nodded. "Mr. Zhu might stay here longer, but I can only wait until the presidential election. Wahid can go back after he gets on stage." She knew that Zhou Hao would not stay in Indonesia for so long. Her tone became cold. "I know you should go back. Get as far away as you can. Don't stay here and hinder our mission." Zhou Hao did not get angry because of her cold words. Instead, he hugged her even tighter. After spending some time with Li Shuihan, he had long known that Li Shuihan was a woman with a tough mouth and a soft heart. Although she said so, she actually did not want Zhou Hao to leave. Therefore, Zhou Hao had long gotten used to her coldness. Instead, he felt that she was different from other people. "What are you doing? Let go of me. I can't breathe." Li Shuihan struggled hard but did not break away from Zhou Hao's embrace. She could only let Zhou Hao walk a few times. "Fourth boss, I can't bear to part with you." Zhou Hao kissed the back of Li Shuihan's neck and said, "Why don't you come back with me?" Li Shuihan snorted and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Those who break the mission without permission must be punished according to military law. They might even be sentenced to life imprisonment or death. Furthermore, why should I go back with you?" Zhou Hao also knew that his idea was not realistic. Furthermore, if Li Shuihan really went back with him, how should he arrange her relationship with other women? Li Shuihan was not the kind of tolerant and gentle woman like Zhao Yuqin and Li Ruolin. God knows what she would do if she acted rashly. So Zhou Hao only talked about it. Li Shuihan rejected him and did not mention it anymore. "Fourth boss, to be honest, do you like me?" Zhou Hao asked with a smile. "Who would like a despicable person like you?" Li Shuihan said angrily, "I think you have forgotten what kind of evil acts you have committed. Which woman would like a man who raped her? I don't have a stag-oil complex." Zhou Hao smiled and said, "Forced? I don't think so. I didn't use violence, and you didn't resist. Besides, you seem to enjoy it." 5. You're the one enjoying it. Li Shuihan's cheeks turned red. She grabbed Zhou Hao's hand and took a bite in front of her. "Fourth boss, if you don't like me, what is our current relationship? A pure sex partner? Or is it a firecracker?" Even though Li Shuihan was much stronger than other women, when she heard Zhou Hao's straightforward words, she could not help but feel embarrassed and angry. She did not say anything. Instead, she held her knees and curled up like an injured little beast. Zhou Hao hugged her and said softly, "Fourth boss, wait and see. Sooner or later, I will make you completely fall in love with me and take the initiative to give everything to me. I swear here." "Dream on," Li Shuihan replied softly. Zhou Hao did not care whether her words came from the bottom of his heart. He just hugged her soft body tightly and fell asleep. Although the storm in Indonesia had not completely subsided, the biggest obstacle on Wahid's path of power, Suharto, Varanto, and Prabowo, no longer existed. As for Windfiend Taro, he had also escaped from Indonesia. Even if there were still remnants of the Wind Devil clan's power in Indonesia, the First Army and the Tang sect would still clean it up. It would not be a big problem. Therefore, Zhou Hao did not need to stay here anymore. As for the distribution of shares that Zhou Hao valued, he also transferred 5 elites from the Galaxy Investment Company to help deal with the related matters. In late March, after informing Zhao Rixin and the others, Zhou Hao prepared to return to China. In order to make it convenient for Zhou Hao to act, the central government officially took back the major general rank that Zhou Hao had been given. In any case, Zhou Hao had no interest in that nameless military rank, so he didn't really care. In the Golden Court building, the group of Indonesian Chambers of Commerce officials led by Pang Jinting, as well as the commanders of the few troops, were all sending off Zhou Hao, who was about to return to the country. Because the crisis in Indonesia had passed, a portion of the troops that China secretly sent over could also retreat. "Brother Zhou, it's all thanks to you that we Chinese have this chance." Pang Jinting held Zhou Hao's hand tightly, his expression very excited. He thought of the time when he met Zhou Hao in China. Back then, Pang Jinting never thought that this young man would give millions of Indonesian people a chance to make a comeback. Now that he thought about the situation back then, Pang Jinting couldn't help but feel that this was a great fortune. The other officers were also very grateful to Zhou Hao. After reaching a certain level, they understood more deeply than ordinary people the injustice and ostracization that the Indonesian people suffered in Indonesia. Therefore, they were very grateful to Zhou Hao in China. "General Zhou, I hope that I will have a chance to work with you in the future." A commander smiled at Zhou Hao. "I am no longer a general. I am just an ordinary citizen of China." Zhou Hao also smiled. "Our country is proud to have a citizen like you," everyone said in unison. Looking at Li Shuihan, who did not say anything, Zhou Hao walked over and smiled at her. "Fourth boss, don't be so sad. When we go back, I will often contact you. Anyway, it won't be long before we meet again. You don't have to miss me." When the surrounding people saw Zhou Hao so boldly teasing Li Shuihan, they were all frightened. They thought that Zhou Hao was going to leave and provoke fourth boss like this. Wasn't he looking for trouble? Sure enough, Li Shuihan glared at him fiercely. She also took out her specially made silver pistol and said in a gloomy voice, "If you keep talking nonsense, don't blame me for piercing your head. Hurry up and get lost." Zhou Hao did not mind. He turned around and bid farewell to everyone present as if nothing had happened. Then he left Golden Court building with the 2 members of First Army who were in charge of his trip and headed to the airport. Although Li Shuihan didn't get along well with Zhou Hao in front of everyone, in fact, after the farewell battle between the two of them ended last night, Li Shuihan gave Zhou Hao a phone number. Through this number, Zhou Hao could directly contact the headquarters of First Army and then contact her from the headquarters of First Army. Outside the window, the trees of different shapes were sprouting, and a few spring birds could be seen jumping lightly on the branches, occasionally making crisp sounds. On the other side of the window, the geography teacher was on the podium, repeatedly pointing at the map of the Earth on the blackboard, explaining how the climate and latitude were related. The audience was silent, and most of the students were listening attentively. This calm scene seemed to make Zhou Hao, who was sitting in the last row of seats by the window, feel a little uncomfortable. Zhou Hao had just returned from Indonesia, which was now filled with blood and gore, to the prosperous and quiet Xiang city. He felt as if he had entered another world. Although this city was located in the southeast of China and was only a sea away from Indonesia, it would only take a few hours to travel by plane. However, these two places were like 2 completely different worlds. Even if the society in China was unfair, there were also tragic events that happened. However, compared to Indonesia, it was much more stable and stable. Looking at the surrounding male and female students, Zhou Hao felt that they were already very happy. They would never imagine those children who were much younger than them and had not started to remember things. How they died under the butcher's knife. The world filled with blood and wails was too far away from them. "What are you thinking about? Why are you so entranced?" Situ Jianying, who was sitting beside Zhou Hao, was now lying on the table with her chin on her crossed arms. She blinked her eyes at Zhou Hao. It was as if Zhou Hao was the only person in the entire world. Zhou Hao smiled and shook his head, but his right hand reached under the table and touched Situ Jinying's soft thigh. After not seeing her for a while, Situ Jinying's body became even more mature. If it was not for the school uniform, no one would know. She was just a high school student. Especially after Zhou Hao's nourishment, her eyebrows became even more alluring, as if they were rejecting her. Those long and thin phoenix eyes seemed to have a hook, making it hard for people to get rid of them. In the girls' school uniform of Ening Middle School, there were 2 green skirts that were worn in the summer. And now, before the winter cold retreated, Situ Jinying had already put them on. She even changed the length of her knee to a short skirt that was no longer knee length, causing her long legs that were much longer than her peers to be in the limelight. Of course, Situ Jinying was not like Li Shuihan, an expert who was immune to cold and heat. Even with Zhou Hao's precious tonics, she could only make her body healthier than ordinary people. Therefore, under the skirt, she still wrapped herself in a pair of black pantyhose, in case she accidentally got cold. In the school, there were still many girls wearing cotton jackets and cotton pants. Situ Jinying's cool attire naturally attracted a lot of attention. Not only those little boys who had just started developing, even some of the young male teachers who were not married also found it very difficult to resist the charm of this girl who was even more mature and beautiful than an adult female. In class, if she did not deliberately display it, she would be nervous and embarrassed. The softness of Situ Jinying's thighs and the unique smoothness of her pantyhose came from Zhou Hao's hands. Zhou Hao said to her, "It hasn't even been winter yet, and you're already dressed like this. How can you still wear it in summer? You have to be careful. If you wear it too revealing, I'm going to get angry." Zhou Hao had also been young and restless. He knew very well what a boy of this age was thinking. Not to mention those guys who had already opened their eyes long ago. Even those honest boys were curious about women because of their cuteness. Therefore, when they saw a beautiful and sexy girl like Situ Jinying, they would often involuntarily treat her as a sex lover. Although it was nothing in reality, Zhou Hao still felt very unhappy that his woman was used by others to be lustful. I know what to do." Situ Jinying laughed softly. She knew the bottom line of a woman's clothing. A woman could dress up more sexy. However, if it was a woman who deliberately exposed her underwear or did not wear any undergarments to cause an outburst, not to mention Zhou Hao, even she herself would not be able to bear it. Looking at Situ Jinying's charming smile, Zhou Hao's heart was burning with anger. His hands kept moving under the table as he scolded softly, "Little vixen, you are getting more and more seductive. Io, don't use so much strength. Everyone is still in class. What if they see it?" Situ Jinying said softly, but not only did she not stop Zhou Hao, she even pressed on Zhou Hao's hand and let him massage her thighs. Since the two of them were sitting in the last row and leaning against the window, no one else saw what was happening over there. The geography teacher, who was over 40 years old on the podium, was also focused on explaining the theory and did not even look down. As for Zhou Hao, he suddenly came to school halfway through the semester. For the special students who disappeared for a period of time a few days later, be it the students in the class or the teachers in various subjects, they were already used to it. In any case, the school's leaders didn't say anything. So why would the teachers and students in the class randomly give opinions? It was just that Zhou Hao was healthy and did not have any serious illness that required long-term leave like the others had imagined. So they were very curious. Because they did not know when Zhou Hao would come to class, and when he would suddenly leave, the last row of seats near the window was kept in the classroom. It could be considered Zhou Hao's exclusive seat. Situ Jinying was originally deskmate with Wang Shijuan, but Wang Shijuan often went to the special tutoring class of the conscription competition during this period of time. In addition, the seat beside Zhou Hao was also empty. Therefore, she went to accompany Zhou Hao by herself. During class, she also did some intimate little movements, which was quite interesting. Why was Shijuan chosen to participate in that recruitment competition all of a sudden? Zhou Hao said as he touched Situ Jinying's thigh. "Humph, so you don't care about Shijuan and me?" Situ Jinying said. Shijuan is now the best language person in our class. In the last semester's final exam, her language grade was 141. She was the first and second in the entire class, and her essay was full marks. She was even the highest in the whole city. Zhou Hao was also surprised because in his previous life, Wang Shijuan did not display any talent in language. However, because of Zhou Hao's rebirth, Wang Shijuan's life had changed completely since junior high school. It was not surprising that her talent in literature, which had not yet been unearthed, was stimulated. At the beginning of the semester, the province was going to organize an enrollment competition. Our school picked 6 students from the senior high school and 2 from each grade. They were the 2 best humanities students, so Shijuan was chosen. Situ Jianying explained. Zhou Hao nodded. It doesn't matter if Shijuan likes it. Since she is interested in literature, let her develop. Maybe she will become a great writer like Zhang Ailing in the future. Wang Shijuan had previously said that she should study hard and that she would be able to help Zhou Hao's career in the future, just like Zhao Yuqin and Su Lin now. However, Zhou Hao hoped that she would have the career she liked instead of giving up her dream for him. Situ Jianying said, of course it is because she likes it that she can have such good results. Compared to language, Shijuan is most afraid of mathematics and science. The previous final exams were just barely passing the passing mark. Teacher Li often say that she missed the exams very seriously. Zhou Hao pointed at Situ Jianying's nose and scolded, you also have the right to say that Shijuan missed the exams? How good is it for you? Moreover, Shijuan specializes in subjects while you focus on subjects. Shijuan relies on the compulsory course of language and literature at the very least. What about you? You actually favored art, which had nothing to do with art. Tell me about it yourself. In the final exam, your total score for the English number 6 subjects of materialization is not even as high as yours. If I were your father, I would be angered to death by you. What is it? Situ Jianying said coquettishly. I just don't understand those languages. What can I do about it? Humph, you are not angry at Shijuan for being biased. She is so strict with me. You are biased. But, do you really want to develop this field of art in the future? Don't tell me you want to be a painter? Zhou Hao smiled and said, but now in the country, the artists who can be considered successful are all old seniors. Usually, there are many late bloomers, and very few young people can really make a name for themselves. Besides, I don't want you to become a so-called beauty painter who uses your body to paint. Situ Jianying twisted her body. What are you talking about? Am I such a shameless woman? I also don't want to be a traditional painter who is too serious. What I want to do is to be a mangaka like Miko Takahashi. Oh, so that's how it is. The future of a mangaka is much better than those traditional artists. Moreover, the domestic manga market will become bigger and bigger, and the prospects of development will be very good. Furthermore, there is a huge shortage of talent in the domestic manga industry, and we are in need of an elite like you. Zhou Hao said. He had never thought that Situ Jianying, with her personality, would have such a high artistic talent. She even wanted to be a mangaka who could influence an entire generation. He said to Situ Jianying, how about this? After you and Shijuan have some success in their studies, I will just set up an anime publishing company and fulfill your dreams. Really? Situ Jianying was pleasantly surprised. She knew that even with her father's ability as the mayor, it would be very difficult for him to set up an anime company. Firstly, he was not familiar with this industry. Secondly, he did not have enough connections. However, with Zhou Hao's ability, he could do it. Of course, Situ Jianying was happy. However, in Japan, where the manga industry is the most developed, many young mangaka start out using H-manga to make a name for themselves. Do you want to give it a try? Zhou Hao smiled maliciously. Situ Jianying's mind and body were far more mature than her peers. She had already enjoyed the pleasures of the fish and water with Zhou Hao, so in her opinion, she was already an adult. However, regarding the matter of having a relationship with Zhou Hao, she was not bold enough to tell her parents. Although Situ Li treated Zhou Hao like a bodhisattva now, when it came to his daughter, no one knew how he would react. So Situ Jianying kept it a secret from them. Due to the premature maturation of her body and mind, many bad students in and out of the school followed her orders. Therefore, from the tribute of those bad students, Situ Jianying could easily come into contact with all kinds of 18 restrictions movies or magazines. Naturally, she also knew what H-man was. Even though Situ Jianying often used those moves in movies or anime to win Zhou Hao's favor, she still felt very embarrassed to personally draw H in person. You big pervert, you only think about these things. Situ Jianying seemed to be angry and happy as she said in a greasy voice. Hey, Zhou Hao, didn't you tell me 2 days ago that you wanted me to wear the maid uniform and nurse uniform from the movies? Those clothes had already been sent over. Next time, can I wear them for you? When he heard Situ Jianying's words, Zhou Hao's heart was filled with ripples. 2 nights ago, he and Situ Jianying had a wonderful night together. At that time, the two of them watched the adult movie made by Japan together. Then, they slowly entered into its state. In the end, they blended together happily. In order to have a date with the woman beside him, Zhou Hao had bought a compound unit of 150 square meters in a newly developed high-end community in Xiang City a long time ago. Before Situ Jianying, Li Ruolin and Yin Qingqing had gone to the hidden golden room separately. It was just that they had always thought that they were the only woman who had been there. The adult movies that Zhou Hao had watched were like carps in a river. Although it was not considered to be high level, it could be considered that he had seen a lot of things. A long time ago, he had wanted to let the women around him wear maid attire, nurse uniform, or police uniform to serve him. However, for girls like Li Rulin and Yin Qingqing who were shy and relatively conservative, it was obviously impossible for them to wear that kind of uniform to serve Zhou Hao. Wang Shijuan, who was still in her prime and had yet to be torn apart by Zhou Hao, was even more impossible. With Su Lin and Yang Jiabao's character, they should not agree. Liang Xiaobing would not refuse, but those maid uniform and nurse uniform were not suitable for her image and temperament. Zhou Hao felt that the ancient costume was more suitable for Liang Xiaobing and was more attractive to him. In the past, he had once asked Liang Xiaobing to wear ancient clothing and a belly band. It had an amazing effect. It ignited his passion completely, but it made Liang Xiaobing suffer, and she was tormented for the whole night. As for Zhao Yuqin, she was also not suitable for those outfits. She only needed to wear the kind of administrative suit that she usually wore, and it would be enough to kill Zhou Hao in an instant. So, after counting, Situ Jianying was still the most suitable person for Zhou Hao to play this role. Little Demoness, did you not teach me enough lessons 2 days ago and become itchy again? Zhou Hao touched her waist. Situ Jianying thought of the charming scene that night and was touched by Zhou Hao's devil hand. She immediately became soft. Zhou Hao quickly held her up. If he let her soften in his arms, there would be no need for this class. Restrain yourself. This is still in class. Don't let others see anything. Situ Jianying glanced at Zhou Hao with a bitter look. You still know how to attend classes. Then why are you still provoking others? It was not easy to wait until the class ended. Situ Jianying, whose heart was itching because of Zhou Hao, wanted to take advantage of Wang Shijuan's absence to go to the laboratory building with Zhou Hao to kiss and touch his hands. However, Li Rulin happened to come to find Zhou Hao. I have no choice. I can only wait for the next time. Zhou Hao smiled helplessly at Situ Jianying. Walking along the school road with Li Rulin, there were green trees on both sides of the road. Occasionally, there would be a spring breeze blowing. It was very comfortable. Seeing that there was no one in the school road, Zhou Hao wanted to hold Li Rulin's hand, but Li Rulin keenly noticed and avoided it. She glared at him. Don't mess around. This is the school. How can I explain it if people see it? Due to the relatively conservative social atmosphere, Zhou Hao also knew that if his relationship with Li Rulin, this teacher-student relationship, was discovered, it would not be so easy to settle it, so he did not force it. The two of them walked side by side on the quiet school road. If Zhou Hao was not wearing the uniform of Yining Middle School, he would be a pair of talented and beautiful partners, making the male teachers in the surrounding teaching or office buildings envious. In the eyes of the male teachers in the school, Li Rulin, this kind of gentle and beautiful unmarried female teacher, was an extremely good target. However, even though they did not know about the relationship between her and Zhou Hao, they had more or less heard that there was a male teacher who attempted to harm Li Rulin and was arrested. He was sentenced to more than 10 years of imprisonment. There was also the former principal. It was said that he also wanted to use his authority to take Li Rulin away, causing him to still be in prison. Furthermore, the matter of Li Rulin donating tens of millions of dollars to the orphanage but being taken over by the Civil Affairs Bureau had also caused a huge commotion. In addition, there were a few male teachers who seriously pursued her but were politely rejected by her. So, after knowing that Li Rulin's identity was not simple and was unwilling to accept the pursuit, the male teachers in the school had no choice but to give up. They could only envy every boy who could walk with Li Rulin like now. How long do you plan to stay this time? Li Rulin asked Zhou Hao. Yes, at least a month. Li Rulin looked at him reproachfully and complained. I remember that ever since I became your class teacher, you have never tried to stay in school for a semester. Yes, not even half a semester. I have never seen a student like you. Zhou Hao shrugged. Sister Lan, do you think a person like me can stay in school for a long time? I will go crazy from boredom. Li Rulin could not care less about Zhou Hao's situation, because Zhou Hao really had to deal with the business outside. That was hundreds of millions, or even billions of business. It would not be appropriate for Zhou Hao to stay in school for a long time. Besides, Zhou Hao's results were not worse than other students. Even if he did not pass one subject, he could use other means to enter a good university. I don't care about you anymore. But you must remember to accompany me to America to see Yun Air during the summer vacation. How would I dare to forget? Zhou Hao quickly said. Zhou Hao still felt very regretful that he did not rush back to see Yun Air off last time. Luckily, Yun Air called back not long ago and said that the mother and daughter had settled down in America, so Zhou Hao and Li Rulin did not have to worry. Suddenly, Li Ruolin looked around nervously and saw that there was no one else around. So she said to Zhou Hao with a red face, "Are you free tonight? If you are free, come to my house and I will cook for you." Not long ago, Li Ruolin gave her dormitory in Yining Middle School to another single female teacher. Li Chufan had stayed in the Sky River branch in Huayu Village for a long time, so Xiaoruqiu followed him to accompany him. The house Zhou Hao bought for the couple was empty, so Li Ruolin moved there. Of course, Zhou Hao knew that if he went to Li Ruolin's house, it would not be as simple as eating. There would definitely be a follow-up show. However, even though Zhou Hao really wanted to agree, he happened to have something to do tonight, so he could only say, "No way, Sister Lan. I have something to do tonight. How about tomorrow? I'll go to your place tomorrow." Okay then, Sister Lan. How's the situation at Tianhe Primary School? Sister Lan asked. Zhou Hao smiled and looked at her. Li Ruolin smiled with relief when she mentioned Tianhe Primary School. It is going well. We have already chosen a place. It is in Donghua Town, not far from the city. It takes up about 100 acres of land. The approval from the Bureau of Education has also been issued. It won't be long before we officially start work. Tianhe Primary School was the school that Zhou Hao had told Li Ruolin to use to enroll migrant children who had difficulty studying. Zhou Hao used the name of the Tianhe Drink Group to invest 30 million renminbi. Since it was still in the early stages of development, Zhou Hao and Li Ruolin both thought that it was better to start from primary school and explore while developing, because Zhou Hao and Li Ruolin did not aim for profit. So, under the situation of the first school's teaching facilities and adequate resources, the fees for students were even lower than other public schools. The finance department of the Tianhe Drink Group had calculated that Tianhe Primary School could at most recover the costs. As for the profits, they would probably be stuck at zero for the next 10 years. Although Tianhe Primary School was a private school with a private property, it was already considered a half-public service business. However, Zhou Hao also had some benefits. The establishment of Tianhe Primary School could not only bring a good reputation to Tianhe Drink Group, but Zhou Hao also planned to use it to store talents for his company. If everything went smoothly, Tianhe Middle School and even Tianhe University would be established one after another. Of course, Zhou Hao's goal was not to train a large number of workers for his company. His real goal was to train a group of truly excellent traditional Chinese medicine talents. Apart from producing talents for his own medical company in the future, he also wanted to promote the essence of the traditional Chinese medicine in China. From the records of Dr. Gong Sun and Xiao Jiming, as well as the Shen Nong's herbal classics, the traditional Chinese medicine was not inferior to modern Western medicine at all. In fact, it was even better than that. Looking at the domestic pharmaceutical industry, the order was chaotic, and the quality of medicine produced by different companies was uneven, and what worried people the most was the lack of technological innovation. Whether it was the national research institutes or private companies, in terms of technological innovation, the progress they had made over the past few decades was extremely limited. Furthermore, many medical talents had been migrating overseas in recent years, causing a severe shortage of talents in the country. For example, the new drugs that were released on the market every year were mostly replaced by old wine in new bottles. The original drugs were repackaged and then pushed out of the market. The quality and efficacy of the drugs were even worse than old drugs. In terms of the technological development of drugs, China was far behind the United States and Europe. Some specialized drugs that targeted special diseases had to be imported to solve them. In Zhou Hao's previous life, he had often seen news about the quality of medicine that caused the health of consumers to be damaged or even death. There were also many large pharmaceutical factories that involved state-owned enterprises. In fact, there had always been a lot of accidents caused by medicine. However, the current internet had not developed to the extent where it could cover tens of thousands of miles in the future. The local relevant departments had also concealed the situation in order to avoid punishment. Therefore, it was very rare for people to hear about such incidents now. There was also the healthcare industry. As the standard of living of the people increased, and they attached great importance to health, the healthcare market in the country became bigger and bigger. Every year, there was a profit margin of tens of billions. However, due to the lack of common medical care knowledge in the country, and many people believing that there was no scientific basis for prescriptions, the healthcare products industry in the country was even more chaotic than those prescriptions and non-prescription medications. Furthermore, the relevant government departments were also involved in this incomparably tempting distribution of interests, so the supervision of the healthcare industry was basically superficial. The most typical example was that in recent years, Brain Platinum had started to use large-scale advertisements to wreak havoc throughout the country, as well as those healthcare drugs that would appear one after another in the future. Most of them were useless even if they did not eat them. In Zhou Hao's view, The innovation in the field of medicine should be mainly focused on the extraction and synthesis technology innovation. As for the formula, it had actually been developed for thousands of years. The research of traditional Chinese medicines and pharmacology in the human body was something that modern Western medicine could not compare to. Specifically speaking, Western medicine started from a microscopic point of view, and traditional Chinese medicines paid more attention to macroscopic things. Because the traditional Chinese medicines were similar to those martial arts sects in terms of inheritance, they did not easily spread their medical skills to others. Hence, many precious medicinal formulas and treatment methods were lost due to their selfishness. Even now, there were many precious medicinal formulas hidden among the people that had yet to be discovered. It was a great loss to the country and the people. After bidding Li Ruolin farewell, Zhou Hao left the school and drove to the most famous villa district in Xiang City. Along the way, Zhou Hao was thinking about the situation of the domestic pharmaceutical industry. Because in the near future, he was going to use Shun Nong's herbal classics to build a pharmaceutical group plan. What are you thinking? Look, your brows are furrowed. A fragrant wind gently blew over. Then, that snow-white slender hand touched Zhou Hao's forehead, as if it wanted to smooth the wrinkles on it. Seeing the jade person in front of him, Zhou Hao quickly threw away the worries in his mind and said with a smile, "Sister." This jade person was Zhao Yuqin. When Zhou Hao was in Indonesia, she was also in Beijing. With Jukin Sataka's help, she managed Zhou Hao's Heavenly River drink group. It was only yesterday that she finally had some free time. She also knew that Zhou Hao had returned to Xiang City, so she immediately took a plane and rushed over. Because she was at her home and the heating was on in the room, Zhao Yuqin's current attire was very cool. She only wore a pink silk nightgown and the light and thin silk fabric wrapped around her body, causing her curvy lines to be fully outlined. This nightgown was in the style of a thin suspender. It crossed Zhao Yuqin's shoulders and then spread open into a large, deep V collar in front of her chest, revealing most of her chest. Zhou Hao could even faintly see a hint of pink on the top of the peak. Further down, the nightdress gradually tightened. Only Zhao Yuqin's slender waist, which was like a water snake, could wear this kind of sexy nightdress that had extremely strict requirements for her figure. At the bottom was a slightly looser skirt. It was very short and could only cover her buttocks, causing Zhao Yuqin's long and slender legs to be completely exposed. If it was not for seeing Li Shuihin's outrageously long legs, among the girls around Zhou Hao, the most beautiful and alluring one would be Zhao Yuqin. Especially Zhao Yuqin, who seemed to have just woken up. Her slightly fluffy long hair was casually draped over her back. Her beautiful face was full of laziness, and with her attire, even Zhou Hao was stunned. "Silly, what are you looking at?" Zhao Yuqin covered her mouth and smiled lightly. That charm on her body increased even more. Zhou Hao held her waist and let this sexy sister stick to his arms. "What are you looking at?" "Of course I'm looking at my good sister. You have seen every part of her body? Aren't you tired of it?" Zhao Yuqin giggled. "How can I be sick of it? I will never get sick of it even if I look at it for the rest of my life." Without saying much, Zhou Hao could not help but stick close to her full and soft red lips. Zhao Yuqin and Zhou Hao had not seen each other for a while and missed him very much. Naturally, she would not reject him and even took the initiative to welcome him. With a beauty in his arms, especially a beautiful and mature beauty like Zhao Yuqin, how could Zhou Hao resist temptation? He was too lazy to carry Zhao Yuqin to the room. He directly carried her and fell on the carpet of wool on the floor. In the midst of tenderness and honey, he accompanied his beloved sister to Mount Witchcraft to enjoy the soul-stirring clouds and rain. After a long time, Zhao Yuqin, whose clothes were untidy, lay in Zhou Hao's arms, gasping for breath. She pulled down the skirt that was lifted to her waist again and looked at the carpet that was covered with large stains of water. She said, "Looks like I have to change the carpet again." She lightly bit on Zhou Hao's chest. "You little enemy, I told you not to mess around like this. You just didn't listen. Sister can't even walk now. You've wronged me again. Who was the one who kept telling me to use more strength just now, and now you're blaming me again?" Zhou Hao teased Zhao Yuqin's full chest and complained. "Oh, stop rubbing it. It is about to get scattered by you." Zhao Yuqin pushed Zhou Hao. "I heard from Song Jiahao that this time in Indonesia, you earned at least 5 to 6 billion USD. Song Jiahao's bonus was also not small. I saw his wife buying a house in Beijing." Zhou Hao could not help laughing. Song Jiahao is really useless. When he has money, he only knows how to buy a house for his wife. He loves his wife. Unlike you, he did not tell his sister anything. At that time, I told you to take care of yourself, but you turned around and ignored my words. If it wasn't for the First Army reporting the situation to Dad, I wouldn't have known that you were injured in Indonesia. Hee hee, I just don't want you to worry, big sister. Zhou Hao smiled bitterly. Zhao Yuqin carefully searched Zhou Hao's naked body, wanting to see if he was still injured. Zhou Hao held her hand and smiled. Sister, you don't need to look. My injuries are all healed, not even a scar. Zhao Yuqin carefully looked at his upper body and then felt relieved. She said, by the way, I heard from Dad that you have returned all the 50 billion yuan that the central government secretly gave you. You also have more than 10 billion yuan. Didn't Uncle Jiang and Uncle Zhu tell you at that time that you only need to return 50 billion yuan? As for those that you have earned, they are all yours. Haha,